الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أصحابه وأهله أجمعين. Joining us today, of course, we're both new to this channel. It's usually Brother Osama and other guests. Is Ustad Ahmed Abdel Sattar. He has a wonderful channel on YouTube called Finding Truth, where it's dedicated to advancing Islam against all types of different ideologies, whether it's secularism, evolution, comparative religions. I advise everybody, if you can, go. Thank you, Hussein. Go to Finding Truth YouTube channel. It's a treasure trove of benefit, inshallah, for everybody. I know it's been great for me, alhamdulillah. Ustad Ahmed has a BEE in Electronics and Communications. He passed his master's courses, majors in computer and networking, masters of business administration, a majors in international business. He has ijaza, 4 years of Islamic studies. He's multilingual, alhamdulillah, in English, Arabic, French, and German. His topics of interest include theology, theory of evolution, quantum mechanics, general relativity, and religion in general. So he's very well versed, cultured, alhamdulillah, and a wonderful brother in totality. Jazakallah khair for joining us, inshallah. So I wanted to start off by kind of, I guess, giving people a crash course on what evolution is. And since the majority of people here are going to be Muslims, I anticipate some Christians and maybe non-religious people will be here as well. But if you can, just briefly, I know you're tired, summarize what evolution is, I guess, in the traditional definition, and our position, the orthodox position, with regards to that specific theory.
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and thank you for the introduction. Okay, so evolution, first, when we talk about evolution, we need to consider some tricks that are played typically by the naturalistic or atheist guys, okay? So the word evolution in itself means change, okay? And typically it means change to the better or to the more complex, okay? Because when you're looking at change, if it's going backwards, we typically call it devolution, okay? So something either evolves or devolves, okay?
Are you guys experiencing the lag too, the buffering?
Yeah.
If you can hear us, Ustad, there's like a little technical difficulty with your stream. Apologize for that, guys. He is in Egypt, so there might be a few instances of these.
Yeah. See, I think he sent. He just got off. He might try to get back on.
Yeah, he's probably gonna reset his stream.
Let's see. Let me see him.
Yeah. So, but basically, what he was discussing is this this general conflation of terms. So, even for example, when they discuss naturalistic phenomena, where a cell or a different type of organism is deteriorating, they'll call that evolution as well. For example, if a cell loses a bonding site for a specific protein, and that allows it to be resistant to antibiotics, but just it's like saying I have a car and I want to get higher fuel efficiency from that car. So what do? I remove the seats. I remove a lot of the material and the insulation. That would be considered beneficial in an evolutionistic paradigm. Meaning now you're getting the desired outcome for that pressure because maybe you're just concerned about commute and gas, because gas prices are high, but you've also completely destroyed your car. Now wintertime comes, there's no insulation in the car, you can't have as many passengers in there, you might get a ticket, but they'll call that evolution as well. I think he just texted us. Can you tell him to rejoin the stream?
Yeah, I can tell him that. Let's see.
Yeah, so there's no categorical separation between them. Whereas it's very easy to imagine an organism getting worse. We see this every day. We see people with like Down syndrome, with like spinal dystrophy, muscular dystrophy, and maybe in some sort of environment that you can envision, they will be more prone to reproduce or are better suited to survive in a certain very like far-fetched type of scenario. But that can't be considered evolution. You know, evolution generally is supposed to kind of have you ascend or descend down the Darwinian tree in a fluid manner, to where, for example, like a bacteria is now a
Hello.
human being.
Assalamu alaikum.
I tried my best in your absence. Alaikum salam.
What happened?
I don't
What
know.
happened? Okay.
Probably the internet or something.
Or probably some evolutionists don't like it.
Exactly. We're being hacked. We're being hacked.
Okay. So we're saying, so evolution refers to things changing and typically to the better. So that's what evolution means. Okay. But then what is its context? If you look, for example, at any specific territory or at any specific planet or star or even the features of things typically change. Okay, so atheists and naturalists would typically start talking to you saying you cannot deny evolution because evolution is change and change is a fact of life. And then the answer is yes, of course, we do not deny change. You cannot deny, for example, that in a specific place, the animals that lived in that place at a specific epoch of time might have been different from the animals that are living in that specific place today. There were, for example, dinosaurs, and today we don't see plenty of them around, okay? There were certain kinds of insects, and maybe some of them are not here today. There were some kinds of animals that might have looked a little bit different at a specific period of time. They still exist today, but they look different. So in terms of that, is evolution in that sense a matter of fact? Yes, it's a matter of fact. But then what is the issue? The issue is, what is the explanation for this change? And then you will need to put this change in context. What kind of change are you talking about? And then propose an explanation for the change. So let me, for example, tell you this. When we dig the ground, you go to deeper and deeper layers of the ground, you will find fossils of creatures where the more deeper you dig, you will find creatures that are typically older because those layers are sedimented in an older epoch. And the observation is, the deeper you dig, the deeper you go in time, the creatures tend to look simpler. So if you dig deep enough, you will not find, for example, any vertebrates. You dig deeper and deeper, you will not find land animals. You dig deeper and deeper, you will not even maybe find any marine animals, so no fish. You will only just find some bacteria. If you dig deeper and deeper, you will find nothing. So it says that at a point of time, life was maybe unicellular, then more complex kind of unicellular, then putative multicellular, very simple multicellular things, and then more complex multicellular things, and then fish, and then animals and plants and birds, and then eventually humans. So you can, if you dig deep enough, you cannot find any skeletons for humans, for example. So is this a fact? Okay, we can agree that this is a fact, or some would like to deny it, but it's pretty pointless to deny that. Now then, the question is, what is the explanation for that fact? So you have, number one, a fact that there is change, and number two, a fact that this change seems pretty correlated chronologically with time, and that this change has a direction from simpler to more complex, and that eventually we have living things that share so many commonalities. They have plenty of similarities. So if you look at animals, you will find that many of them have eyes, for example. They can hear, they can taste, they have skin, they have vertebral spinal cord, etc. But you will find also that they are very different. So you'll find something very intelligent like a human being, something less intelligent but still smart like a chimp, something very cute like a cat, something cute like a dog but different. But they look the same, but they're very different too. So what is the explanation? So people would then now split into, let's say, two major camps, okay? The first camp will say, there is God, there is a designer for this universe, he is one, and guess what? When there is one designer, then his designs, and he wants you to find him. So there are two assumptions there, okay? There is one designer, so this is a hypothesis that you're putting forward, right? There is one designer for this whole thing, okay? Number two, he wants you to find him. Okay, they come together. What would you expect if there is one designer and he wants you to find him? Will he, for example, create on the same planet Earth life that is like human beings, and then something that is like off a comic book talking about aliens on Andromeda that have no connection whatsoever to human beings? So externally they might look like, I don't know, a monster, and internally you do not even find what you would expect in terms of cells, in terms of DNA, in terms of the material, the basic material. They might be not even hydrocarbon based altogether. Maybe they are based on silicon or arsenic or something that is, or gallium or something that's completely out of our perspective.
So like you'd expect cohesion or some type of signature.
Yeah, because if he's one, and he wants you to reach the conclusion that he is one, he would make designs that look similar, right or not? Otherwise, you might think this is a pantheon of gods. One god created humans, another god created plants, a third one created stars and planets. And okay, they are not fighting now, so the universe is, you know, brought together somehow. But there is very clear difference between this kind of creature and that kind of creature. All right, you get what my point. So yes. This is one camp. The camp of the believers will say there are great similarities because there is only one designer, okay? And there are differences because this designer is intelligent and he would create he's Hakim, okay? And the meaning of Hakim and Hikmah is that he puts something where it should be, okay? Things are proportioned to their use. Things are functionally specific to their purpose. So since this creator is one and he wants to be found, his creation will be lending themselves to the fact that he is the same creator, and they will be different so that they are fit to their environment and they are efficient. So it also tells you something about him, that he is Hakim, that he is Rahim, that he is Qawi, that he is all what you can think, that he is Jamil. Inna Allah Jamilun yuhibbul Jamal. And you see around you, you see butterflies. Okay, you don't see those despicable aliens. Okay, but you also see that he can create things that look ugly. Okay, so you can see the difference. So you can find something like the piranha fish, which looks very, ferocious. Yeah, you can find something like a spider, or you can find something like a scorpion. Okay, they are fearful to us. Of course, probably for a scorpion, a female scorpion does not look like despicable. I would expect, but for humans, maybe he thinks that humans don't look good. You know,
but, to me, they're beautiful. To me, they're so beautiful.
Absolutely. When you look into the anatomy, when you look at how this looks like a great way of a creature to be if it's living in this harsh condition of the desert and it needs to protect itself, etc. And then you are surprised that when we humans try to make designs that will most efficiently exist in those environments. So look today when they want today to design a rover that roams Mars. They think first of wheels, but eventually what are they designing now?
Yeah,
they're designing robots that will go on legs, but not 2 legs. Maybe not 4 legs, maybe 6, maybe 8.
If I'm
You
not
know?
mistaken, in your field, it's called like biomimicry, right?
Absolutely. So now we start, as we grow more intelligent, as we gather not only knowledge but also wisdom, we eventually find that we will have to converge to what we only perceive as not beautiful just because it's different. So it's not really not beautiful, it's just different and we're not used to it. But when we want to create the same function, we have to resort to the same design. So this is the first camp, okay? So the first camp puts forward a hypothesis, and then what you see matches the hypothesis. So you feel that this makes sense. And then there is all the other, you know, heaps over mountains, over, you know, planets and stars of evidence that we can look to. But let's just look at the basic hypothesis. And this hypothesis is, of course, originating from the fact that when you look at this marvelous universe, where things are functionally specific, whether in the physical, non-living world, or in the physical living world, okay, that you find absolutely stunning functional specificity. But you also find something else that I would point out here and then go to the other camp. The other thing is that what are the first two hypotheses? There is one creator and he wants to be found, right? So if you have designed this house and you want to be found, okay, wouldn't you just leave a signature somewhere or maybe send a note, I am the designer? So you expect from this creator who wants to be found to send you something, to let you know about him from him, not just from his creation. So we expect that he sends messages and that he gives those messages to messengers, and that in those messages, he would put evidence to the extent that nobody other than the one who has designed this universe can write this message. So I like to give this parable. You go to the jungle or to the desert and you find this marvelously designed and built house. Nobody's living there, so you go and you live there. A few years down the road, somebody comes to you and says, I am carrying to you a message from the designer and the builder of that house, and he has an instruction manual for you. If you don't follow his instructions, he'll kick you out of the house. If you follow his instructions, or he'll punish you, he will just keep you living there, but you just need to follow the instructions. What will be your initial reaction to that? What are you going to say?
Yeah. Common sense.
Give me the evidence that you are a messenger from the designer, right or not? And then the guy will tell you, okay, I have the blueprint of the house. Go to the bedroom on the second floor, open that other door, you will find a picture. Behind the picture, there is a safe, and inside the safe, there is a note on which written, I am the designer or something, okay? Or he will give you a particular of the design that only the builder of the house would have known about, okay? A secret room, something in the foundation, something about the material of the inner core of the main pillar of the house that you don't know, and nobody else who's living in the house would know. And this is what the single creator who wants to be found has done. He sends a message like the Quran. He sends a message like the Torah. He sends a message like Psalms. He sends all those messages, and in those messages he says, for example, وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ, for example. He says things about embryology. He says things that were not known at the time of the Prophet, and only the one who has created would have been able to say them. So now you know, there's one, now everything adds up. There's one creator. He wants to be known. He has manifested his will to be known by sending a message. In this message, he has put the evidence that this message can only be produced by him, confirming all three things in the same time. Number one, that he exists and one. Number two, that the one carrying the message is indeed his messenger. And number three, that the message is authentic. And then this authenticity of the message will mean that you have now to follow his instruction manual for dealing with the house. All right? He tells you, do the plumbing this way, conduct yourself in the house this way, throw the garbage out of this place, not in this place. Otherwise, the house will collapse over your head, because there are design parameters that you need to respect. And this is exactly what he's done. He sent this message with the evidence that will unfold not only to the first one that receives the message who is inhabiting the house, but also to all next generations, so that each and every generation will find in his message a nuance to the extent that there is a continuous reconfirmation of the creator, the message, and the messenger. So this is the first camp. Now the second camp starts from a presupposition. There is no creator, okay? And since when they dig, they find that there is, at a point of time, there was no life. It means there was no intelligence also, right?
And
so whatever has...
Yeah. This camp, that first principle, there's no creator, they take it axiomatically, meaning it's unchallengeable. This is from where they start. Whereas what you just described about the first camp involved a little bit of epistemological deliberation, whereas this is their starting point, and everything is kind of like an offshoot from that. Would you say that's the case?
Absolutely. So let's even say that somebody would just put on the table something that has no foundations altogether. Okay, let's say that both have no foundations altogether. One just assumes that there is a creator and that he is one, not two or three, and then would compare reality to his assumptions, right or not? This is how hypothesis and hypothesis verification goes. Okay,
I think Stephen Meyer calls it the appeal to the best explanation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you put together a hypothesis, and then you look for the best explanation. Actually, I don't really like so much. I like Stephen Meyer very much, but he also tries to be very politically correct in his explanations. Because it's not, it's not the best explanation in my opinion.
It's the only explanation.
It is, yeah, because essentially nothing at all. So best explanation would be like, this explanation looks like 90% and that other one looks like 70 or 60 or something. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's not like this. When somebody hears the word like best explanation, so there are many explanations. One of them, they are all possible. Okay, they are all explanations, but one of them is like the best. Okay, and
absolutely.
It is like he likes to give this thing about picking a lock, and there is a lock that is like 20 digits or something, and somebody is tampering with the lock, trying to find a combination of 20 or 100 numbers by a whim of chance within 10 seconds before somebody will come and catch him, and then he will ask you, what is the chance that he will know the right combination? The chance is zero, actually. It is nothing but zero. There is no there is 10% or 5% chance, or it might be 30% if he is smart. The chance is, what is the chance that you have a combination lock that has 100 numbers on it, or 100 positions? Each position has 10 different combinations. What is the chance that I'm going to leave you for 10 seconds or even 10 years and you will just guess it by sheer chance? It's zero. It's nil.
There's a movie called Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey, where at the end, I don't know if people have seen it. He's like this like a clumsy, accident-prone guy, and he has like a gap in his tooth. So at the end he goes up to the love of his life, and he says, "What are the odds of a guy like me being with a girl like you?" And she says, "Maybe 1,000,000 to 1." And he's like, "So there's a chance." And so he looked at it the exact opposite way.
It is something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you talk about best explanations here, I really find it more like a political correctness.
Yeah.
But fine. Okay, let's look at what kind of explanation we have on the other side. So on the other side, they go like this. The hypothesis is there is no creator, and the universe started as pure matter and energy, so there is no intellect. Okay, so the hypothesis is that without a universe to start with, without any intellect, the universe can create itself from nothing. Immediately a philosophical paradox. Immediately, just at the front door, you are running at a philosophical paradox. The universe, the first thing is, because you start from material, and all our current theories say that just the theories regardless if Islam agrees with that or not. This is a completely different issue. But we are in a universe that it's on the average expanding. Hence, it must have started from nothing. If you roll it backward, you keep rolling it backward, it goes back to nothing. So the first thing that you need to establish is that the universe has created itself from nothing. And once you say the universe has created itself, you are, just throwing yourself out of the window. At the front door, you are philosophically contradictory.
Self-contradictory.
And then, it's completely nonsense. And then, out of this nothing that starts with a very condensed state and then blows up, okay, it cools down into an organized state. Okay, and this is against everything that we know about. Okay,
Entropy.
Yeah, so if you start with something that is very organized, let's say a bomb, for example, okay, packed together very well, and then you detonate it, okay, a nuclear explosion, for example. So it starts very ordered, very with itself, and then boom, okay. What do you expect? Will it settle in the form of the Empire State, or something else? Or Burj Khalifa, or no, it's gonna go up in flames and dust and then gonna sediment on an even plane. It's just gonna sediment, okay? Form something like, I don't know, a pyramid or something, and then the wind will even it out. This is how things go. Things just do not go from less organized state into a more organized state. And what do we see around us? We see around us a universe that looks pretty organized. It's just absolutely amazingly organized.
So you
and then when you look, sorry,
you cannot get order from chaos.
Absolutely. The only way you can get order from chaos is with the intervention of an intelligent agent.
Yeah.
Why? Because the intelligent agent will introduce some inefficiency at part of the formula to gather efficiency at another part of the formula, okay? So, for example, you will be burning fuel in your car, causing all kinds of heat dissipation, but you will cause the car to go in an orderly manner from point A to point B, where you will fulfill a purpose, okay? You will do excavations and take out metals and cause all kinds of mess, and then, heat those metals and form alloys, and then form them into a car. Through this whole supply and manufacturing chain, you have caused all kinds of heat dissipations and disorder and pollution and chaos, but you have got out with the car, okay? So an intelligent agent will introduce a dislocation in the reorganization of the chaos, okay? And the only thing that seems to be able to do that, in our experience, is a living intelligent agent, like a human being, like an animal, like a bird. So a bird will collect straws and will create a nest, for example.
Like plants and photosynthesis.
Plants do photosynthesis, etc. So living things tend to do this, otherwise they will.
Oh, it's buffering again. Can you send him a message to tell him to refresh his internet?
He's probably going to wait and see for the...
Yeah. If you can hear us, Sheikh, if you can restart your stream again.
Hold on, he left. He'll be back.
Okay. You have to do the Arnold. You do the Arnold impersonation for everything else except the actual phrase.
I was locked in, man.
He'll be back.
Yeah, I was locked in. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. No, he was going off. Inshallah. Let's see if he's back. Sent a request here.
Alhamdulillah ala ni'mat al-Wi-Fi, huh?
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, he's probably... I kind of expected this, to be honest. I expected that his Wi-Fi was probably gonna... He's probably gonna have trouble with his Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Although Yemen makes it look like dial-up.
Hello.
Oh, there you go.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. I don't know why I went away again. I saw you lagging and then I went away, so I'm not sure if I'm only the one who disconnected.
Oh, maybe
Yeah.
it's probably just because it's a lot of data drainage what we're doing right now.
So this is the thing. So at the end, even a single cell maintains something called homeostasis, which means that it is very ordered inside, and outside of that, things are very disordered, and it keeps this reverse gradient, taking materials and energy from the environment, which is less ordered, and ordering it inside in a way that maintains its life. So it follows a path of what is typical to a thermodynamic process. Okay, it maintains two things that never happen in nature except in living things. It maintains a high level of order. It maintains a high level of order, while in the same time maintaining a high level of energy. Okay, and I'll give you an example. For example, water looks like water. It's fluid. But then when you have very cold weather, you can have snow. And when you have snow, you have snowflakes. And snowflakes look marvelous, right? They have those structures that are wonderful, right? So obviously, the structure of a snowflake is more ordered, okay, to us as an external observer than the structure of a water droplet, okay? But this happens when the water loses energy. So you can have a more ordered configuration of matter when it falls to low energy. But you cannot have your cake and eat it in the same time. Okay? If you are heating matter, okay, it will not maintain a higher level of order. If you heat it, if you heat the snowflake, it will become disorganized into fluid and then into vapor. Okay? If you cool it, it will fall down to a state of stability. It gets more organized. But you cannot heat the water and get the snowflake at the same time. A living system does that. A living system is metabolizing, which is producing energy all the time, while in the meantime, it maintains its high level of organization. And it grows and it completes its functions and it builds its organs, etc., etc., etc. So only living things do that. So this second camp says, okay, there's only materials and energy. Now they need to justify how it occurs anyway from the first paradox, but now there is only material and energy. And then guess what? Because of the laws of nature, it organizes itself into a universe with all these marvelous things that we see around us. But then this is not enough. Life, which has this amazing property that we talked about, highly ordered system that maintains a high level of energy. Okay, it just doesn't sediment into something or cool into something like a snowflake. No, it is absorbing energy from the environment and metabolizing and generating heat and whatever, but maintains a high level of organization. So this is a very big problem. How can you have this? And now going back to this best explanation, there is no explanation at all. The only explanation is a strike of luck. This is the only explanation, okay? So you want this guy to unlock the 100-digit combination, and then they have this amazingly, I don't know how to call it, amazingly ridiculous argument that since he went in, since the thief went in, then he must have known it, okay?
Yeah.
So he was lucky.
We're here, so we shouldn't be surprised that we're here. That's
Absolutely.
what they say.
So you're telling me that there's 100 places in the combination lock, and it doesn't make sense that he has gone in by luck, okay? But guess what? In 10 seconds he was in. So luck worked for him. Okay, but then you have to ask them, guys, didn't you consider that he cheated, for example? That somebody gave him the right combination, for example? Okay? They don't want to consider that. They don't want to consider the intelligence aspect of it. So how will they go with this? They say that life occurred with this sheer accident of luck. But now they're stuck. Why are they stuck? Because if the thief, after going into the first door and unlocking the 100 combination lock,
there's another.
There he finds another door. He wants to reach the safe, and guess what? The safe has another 100 combination lock on it, okay? And then they cannot claim that he opens it by luck again, okay? So they have to maintain that there has been one abiogenesis event. Abiogenesis means creation of life from non-life. How did this abiogenesis event take place? By luck, okay? But then they cannot claim more than one, because it will be, the first one is already ridiculous. The second one will be absurd.
And this goes to what you said in the very beginning, where they give names and titles to processes that are far-fetched, just as kind of like a guise to make people. So abiogenesis.
Yes.
As opposed to just saying the start of life or something like that.
Yeah. So, and they like use Latin, etc. So abio means not living. Genesis is creation. So creation of life from non-life.
Yeah.
But then they can only claim one abiogenesis event. And then you will need to explain how this abiogenesis event, which would produce something called a protocell, which is a cell that has the minimum things that will cause us to call it living, okay? Now, the minimum things that will cause us to call it living are so much already that they cannot explain it anyway. But then they use this thing about the thief was in, so it must have happened. Now, we just need to know how it happened, okay? And I would just here quote and ask you to remind me with this. The Quran says, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ. Okay? So the Quran is telling us we should be the ones who are doing abiogenesis research. Why? Because when you go and you understand that كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ is extremely, not just unlikely, it's impossible to happen. Because there are so many chicken and eggs. You know the chicken and the egg, which comes first? There are so many chicken and egg situations that are impossible to occur unless the system is created as a whole. And I have this thing called Is Evolution True or False course, where I start from the point of something called the RNA world hypothesis and plenty of other nonsense of evolutionists, and address it and show, because they cannot, for example, explain DNA. So they say maybe RNA was before DNA. And then I show that RNA before DNA is completely impossible. And they know it. So they say maybe RNA co-evolved with some proteins or some lipids, and then somehow it changed into DNA. I show it's also not possible, etc. It's a continuous series of impossible, paradoxical scenarios. But then now we are left now with the next frontier, which is the Darwinian evolution. Now the Darwinian evolution cannot claim more than one origin. Why? Because if it claims more than one origin, it will kill abiogenesis. Okay? So you have, as Darwin, or as a Darwinist, to start from how many abiogenesis events? Just one. And then you need to explain all of this diversity. And then this one first abiogenesis event creates a protocell that has no intellect whatsoever. And then you need to find a process that will create the spiders and the butterflies and the plants and the sunflower and the grass and the trees and the palms and the insects and the birds and the fish and the chimps and the lions and the tigers and the human beings, all without intellect. What is left when you remove intellect completely from the formula? Chance again. It's chance again. And then look at what you are left with. Guys, you just agreed to one life-creating event to then claim 3.8 billion years of unlocking the 100 combination lock. Millions upon millions upon billions of time, and every time it happens. And then what will they say? Since we're here, since we're here, it happened. No, this is not the explanation. Your hypothesis is false. You have to have the scientific integrity to face it, that it's not only absurd to have more than one abiogenesis event, and that's why you can only claim one, it is also absurd to have any evolution from that protocell to anything else, especially given this person or those three persons sitting now having this intelligent conversation. It's completely impossible to generate this kind of intellect from nil, from nothing. And all those types of beautiful and amazingly smart creatures from no intellect and from sheer chance. And subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, after mentioning a series of ayat that talks about the creation, whether of things like al-jibal or al-hayawanat wal-tuyur ila akhirih, and then he says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. Right? Why? Because only the ignorant will accept, only the ignorant will accept this nonsense.
Yes.
There is no way. And the reality of the matter is that Darwin knew nothing about genetics. Darwin knew nothing about the real complexity of biology. And when genetics were discovered and when biology went into molecular biology and they discovered genetics, the whole theory needs to be thrown away. And you have something called neo-Darwinism. And then this 2016, November 2016, there was this Royal Society that essentially said the Darwinian mechanism cannot account for novelty. What does novelty mean? It means the emergence of new things. So guys, okay, you cannot account for novelty. So what remains then? If you cannot account for a multicellular organism, for a unicellular organism, for sexual reproduction from asexual reproduction, for fish from putative creatures, for land creatures from fish, for avians from land creatures, what can you account for exactly? You can account for nothing. And then they start sticking names. We'll consider things like evo-devo, like self-organization, natural genetic engineering, complete nonsense.
Endosymbiosis.
Symbiotic theory, neutral theory, and just putting a list. And they say, we can save this theory by investigating those areas. Okay, go and investigate and come back to us. Do not just call it, give it a new name. It's a series of giving new names. You call extended evolutionary modern synthesis. This doesn't solve anything if you just call it extended, by the way. You can call it whatever you want. Give us the explanations.
The mechanism. I remember watching your a debate you had with Dr. Swamidas.
Yeah.
And he had a similar debate with Michael Behe. And in the middle of it, you're trying to give him arguments against Darwinian evolution. And he says, wait a second. Like, I don't know any biologist who still believes that Darwinian evolution is sufficient for biodiversity. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, it's a consensus in the biological community that it's not enough. That's why he proposes neutral theory, and then other people have different ideas. But they don't tell people this. It's like it happened overnight. They just swapped theories but kept the foundation.
Absolutely. The Darwinian mindset is so dishonest with its audience to an appalling level. Within their circles, they know what is feasible and what is not feasible explanations. But when they push that to the science explainers who are talking to the public, they don't say it. They say, yes, natural selection and random mutations explain everything, but there are small pieces that we're figuring out. Really? There is nothing that you know. The only thing that you guys know is that natural selection can pick from many variants, okay, and make the variant that is more fit to the environment reproduce better. Okay, so if we are somebody with dark skin and somebody with light skin, and we are thrown in the middle of Africa, maybe the guy with dark skin will be able to sustain the sun better. And if we are thrown in Antarctica, maybe the guy with the light skin will be able to endure because he will reflect now and he will have different things, but he will then be maybe able to endure in the very cold weather better. So eventually, only the dark people will become the endogenous of Africa, and the lighter colored people will become the endogenous of Europe. But then this does not answer, how is there people in the first place? Why are there dark and light people in the first place, and red and yellow, etc., etc.? Who created this creature? Who gave this creature all those possibilities of diverse traits to the extent that this creature can inhabit every single place on Earth, unlike other animals, for example, unlike other plants, unlike other insects? Why? We know why, as the first camp knows why, right? Because he said, وَاسْتَعْمَرَكُمْ فِيهَا. Right? He has caused you as humans to be able to colonize Earth. So if he has created us to colonize the whole Earth, he will give us the genetic diversity to the extent different kinds of people will be able to inhabit all the different environments on Earth. You find people living in the Tibet, and you find people living in the Dead Sea. All right? You find people living in the equator, and you find people living in Alaska. We're all over the place. All right, maybe only ants can compete with us, but I don't think there are ants in Alaska. I'm not sure, but well, we're all over it. All right, we drill the Earth and we go to space. Every single thing, I have to say that every single thing that evolutionary theory is looking for an explanation for can be very readily and easily explained from the first camp point of view. There is one creator. There is one designer. He wants to be known. He gives us the evidence to have all the reasons to think that he is there, and he is one, so that when he sends a message, we receive it and we perceive it, and we look for his fingerprint. What is he leaving there to tell us that he is the sender? And so I hope that was not too long.
No, that was perfect.
Yeah.
I have, like, hearing you speak, I had just like a very, I think, poignant question for you personally, because you're obviously like you've been through the school system, you know, graduate programs and everything. And you've been Muslim your whole life, alhamdulillah, like us.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
But when did you start, like, maybe when did you start questioning it? Because I'm sure it was in your textbooks as well. What was like the concept that made you say, wow, this is far-fetched? Or was it derived from religion? Were you just trying to reinforce like what the Quran taught you? Like, a lot of atheists assume that we just operate from that paradigm. The Quran has this idea of creation and intelligence, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Hakim Badi'u Samawati wal Ard, and we're trying now to kind of restrict our sight to proving that. But hearing what you said, your conclusions were based on an intellectual foundation, on a foundation that is empirical. Was there a specific aspect of evolution that you looked at and you said this can't be?
So
aside from abiogenesis?
You're asking me a very smart question. So nobody has asked me that before. So actually, there is this person, I'm sure that almost maybe all of the audience will not have heard of him. He's an Egyptian medical doctor called Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud. All right? I'm sure if you've even heard of him. And he was an atheist, okay? And this guy liked science. And he was doing this program called Al-Ilm wal-Iman, Science and Faith, okay? And it was aired in the, I think it started in the 70s and went all through the 80s and probably the beginnings of the 90s. And as a little child, okay, you know, like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years, I was just a great enthusiast of his. And he was, at that time, when nobody was talking about relativity and evolution, etc., he was addressing those issues. It caused me to read a lot on those issues. And at the age of 13, I had a resolution with myself that nothing makes sense unless the first camp is completely correct. Okay? And it just makes me reflect on the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set an age for accountability to be the age of puberty. So apart from the fact that all our teenagers, I'm not sure even if this term makes any sense, but all our teenagers are being consumed on social media and games, etc., I believe that anybody at the age of puberty is equipped enough to look around him and make a resolution that this beautiful and highly organized universe can only exist if there is a creator and that he must be one. And then he will be left with the third question, okay? Does he care or does he not care? In terms of sending us guidance, because if he didn't care, this universe would immediately collapse, okay? But then does he care in terms of sending us guidance? And then, if he cares, then he should have eventually sent guidance that stays uncorrupted or keeps sending the guidance with new versions all the time. And then you should look at the Quran, which is claimed to be the last one, where there are billions of people on the face of the earth who believe in it, and that has no scientific issues. And you go to the parable of the house in the desert or in the jungle, and you check if that message is addressing the people who live in this age with their lexicon and with their modern science, to the extent that you are sure that this is the one creator who cares and who wants to be found. I think this is not a big challenge. This is not a big challenge because it becomes as obvious as daylight. If you throw in the garbage bin the nonsense of the second kind of hypothesis, the second camp hypothesis, just by opening your mind, and that's why in the Quran he's always saying, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِم. Why? حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves, until it is evident or obvious to them that it is the truth, and it is here refers to the Quran, to God's message. All right? So, سَنُرِيهِمْ. So, just with your bare eyes. لعلهم يتفكرون لعلهم يعقلون إن كنتم كذا إن كنتم كذا. Okay, إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون يعقلون يؤمنون إلى آخره. So يعقلون أن يؤمنون أو يتفكرون أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها, etc., etc., etc. Everywhere. If you just have eyes that can see, ears that can hear, a brain that has the minimum level of function to the extent that you are considered a sane person. If you're crazy, if you are unconscious, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hold you accountable. But if you are conscious and sane and has the minimum acceptable human intellect with eyes and ears that can hear and see, you will be able to find God, resolve that He is one, resolve that He wants to be found, and then verify His message. This is not a big issue. Whether you start from a religious camp or from an atheist camp, if you have the will for it, the eyes, the ears, and the brains, you will reach it. You'll reach it.
I remember my turning point was I was working at a gas station before I was like even involved in counter-evolutionary stuff. I had no idea about it. I just knew the general story, common ancestor, humans, whatever. And my friend who goes to Wayne State, he was in a lecture, and the lecture finished, and he called me. I remember 2 times this has happened my whole life, where a person calls me after hearing something so crazy. So he said, Wissam, have you ever heard of the primordial soup, like the pool theory? I'm like, no, I've never heard of it. He's like, well, I just finished class. I think it was like biology or chemistry. And he said that life started by chemicals in a pool that got struck by lightning, and that lightning catalyzed life. And instinctly, I'm like, I saw this on a Halloween special. This can't be science. The second time I heard, I had to laugh was a friend of mine was giving da'wah to a Hindu sister, and she started telling him the story about one of their gods, about how an elephant was decapitated, and then his head was put on the body of another man, and that became God. And the theory of evolution was more absurd than that, in my opinion.
At least they're starting from an elephant.
Yeah,
they're starting from something living, not from soup.
Yeah, I had no reservations against it initially. Yeah. but I couldn't bring my, and even to this day, you read like in Nature, they're still kind of recycling that old, that popularists will tell you, no, it's not that simple, you know, and then you go to the publications and they'll try to reword it in a different way, but they'll use a lot of caveats like maybe or possible or it's likely or unlikely, and then it's just a lot of vagueness for something that's very clear, like ostensibly, like you said, to anybody. And you mentioned the ayah about أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. There's another ayah that's similar. It says أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. So one is an appeal to your spirituality, to your understanding of who you are and your heart and the other one kind of appeals to your reason. So Islam is kind of, it fuses those two. It fuses like intellectual fulfillment as well as it's in line with your nature.
Absolutely, subhanallah.
Some questions here.
Yeah, let's go. If you'd like to bring people on the stage also, I'll be, I have no problem
so
with
if
that.
anyone wants to join, I think you can request to join. We have a fourth spot if you want to personally ask a question, or for the meantime, someone asks, he says, why do atheists, oh, I'm sorry. Can he?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, let me go back up to the question. I don't know why. Hold on one second. Okay, so why do atheists use chimps' DNA to prove that we were once chimps? That we were once chimps.
Okay, so, all right. Here goes. Okay, so let me tell you those. Okay, so the whole theory of evolution is based on the fact that there are things that are similar, and then you say that things that are more similar are essentially coming from the same parents, okay? So, or the same ancestors, all right? So you start categorizing things to the extent that you put the things that are more similar near to each other, and then you draw what they call phylogenetic trees. So you need to make a resolution, because you need only, you can only claim one creation of life event by chance, of course, in their paradigm. So you need to find what is the most similar creature to human beings, to then group the human being with it and say that they come from one common ancestor. Well, it occurs that we look like chimps. This is...
What are you trying to say?
This is no... So if you look at a human being, for example, versus a chimp or a, I don't know, a sparrow, you will probably say looks more like a chimp, okay? If you compare, for example, a human being to, I don't know, a cat, still looks more like a chimp, etc. However, you know, looks are not everything. So you have creatures that look so much like each other, but are not closely related at all on the phylogenetic trees. So you will have, for example, creatures that are marsupial, so they have, you know, like kangaroos, they carry their kids in pouches, and creatures that have that give birth to fully made placental babies.
Yeah.
And you will find a placental and a marsupial that look so much like each other, okay, but they are not related. Okay,
they look exactly alike.
They look exactly alike. So until you really examine it, you will find that it is completely different, because there is a specific place in their evolutionary mind where placental creatures emerged and marsupials emerged, etc. So then you need to find a criteria where you have a way to determine what is similar and what is not similar. All right. So when we knew about DNA, we, I'm not sure if I should use we, biologists started using similarity in DNA to determine which creatures are more similar to each other. But the DNA of a single creature is a very, 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 very long series of codes. So the human genome has like 3 billion base pairs, all right? So you will not go comparing 3 billion base pairs of the humans to every other creature. So they tend to use specific parts of the DNA, for example, something called cytochrome, okay? So cytochrome comes in different variants, cytochrome C, cytochrome B, cytochrome, etc. So if you use cytochrome C, for example, you will find that the most close creature to the humans is the chimp, okay? But this is a discretionary selection. If you use cytochrome B, for example, you might find that the pig is more related to the human being.
Or the mouse, yeah.
Or something else. And you will, if you find that the chimp, you will eventually go back and find the common ancestor with the mouse. And if you use cytochrome B and you start with the pig, I'm not sure if you're going to end up with the mouse or rats anyway or not. Anyway, so some have said, okay, because we're doubting that the chimps and the humans look alike because of the phenotypic similarity, how they look externally, and because of cytochrome C, let's do a full DNA comparison, okay? Full genome comparison. And they did the full genome comparison, and you will find all figures thrown at you. It's 99% similar, it's 98% similar, it's 97% similar, it's 95% similar. So, okay, it's 95% similar. Let me tell you this. Human beings understand 1.5% of the human genome. Okay, fact. Human genome is 3 billion base pairs. We understand what 1.5% of it does, which is the part.
Obviously, the rest is junk.
Yeah, and they say, Darwinists will tell you, the rest is, they call it junk DNA. So once they call it junk DNA, it means that it has no function. So now, does it make any sense that you use something that you understand to 1.5% only, what it does, and then you use it to make a comparison of which creature is the ancestor or not the ancestor of which other creature? I think not. But then the striking issue that will even show you that even the 1% or the 2% or the 5% is not small, because you are talking about few percentages that out of 3 billion. Okay. Okay, so that's plenty.
Yeah.
So if you only have 2% that is different, and you only understand 1.5% of what the human genome does, so the percentage of difference is almost equal in terms of order of magnitude to everything that you know about the human genome. Okay? About its functioning part. All right? And then we need to think like this. The humans and the chimps look anatomically, they look anatomically pretty similar. We are both vertebrates. We walk on, they don't really, they're very bipedal, but they use their hands to help, etc. But, you know, there are obvious similarities. So you expect that they have the same genes that will produce the bones, that will produce the skeleton, that will produce the muscles, the eyes, the hair, the mouth, the teeth, etc. So you do expect that there are plenty of differences. But we also, of similarity, but we also know that there are so many differences. Okay, obviously, chimps are not colonizing the Earth and not sending spaceships to the moon and to Mars, etc. So there's plenty of differences. So some have gone the extra mile and they said, okay, because we really don't understand DNA, and really, guys, I need to tell you this, we don't even know if DNA is responsible for what we are. We don't know that. Okay? So recently, within the last 20 years, a new field called epigenetics shows that the genetic system as a whole is controlled by a super system that's sitting on top of it, that is directing it. Now, someone will tell you that the epigenetic system is itself entrenched into the genes, so there are genes that actually manifest the epigenetic layer that then controls the genes themselves. But we also know that there are probably so much more beyond the genetics and the epigenetics, maybe things in the cytoplasm, maybe things in the cell membrane, maybe just the very fluid that is in the cell, the water that is in the cell itself. And I would advise people really to look into my interview with Dr. James Stewart about something called the interactome, okay? And just to give you a sense of it, if you get a cell and you dehydrate the cell, so everything is inside, the DNA, the cell membrane, the nucleus, everything, all the organelles of the cell are there. And then you hydrate it again, it will not come back to life. It will not just wake up. It will not come back to life. So according to this tested hypothesis, there is something in the water itself, in the fluid, in the water that is in the cell, where there is an unknown amount of information that is coded, that is controlling the matter of life. And it really makes me reflect on the matter of وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, right or not? All right? So there is a very strong connection between the very aspect of water and life. So setting all that aside, all what we know about the genetic system does not justify life. But then some people did that. They said, okay, what we understand about the genetic system, which is the part that produces the proteins, okay, is a very small part. Let's even look at the proteins. So they did a comparative analysis between all the proteins that are available in the human body, and proteins are very important in biology because proteins are the machinery that make things happen. And all the proteins that are in the chimps, and they found that there is 70% difference. Okay?
Yeah.
So
the ratios the ratios that they use are completely arbitrary.
So at the end of the day, what it tells you is 99 or 98 or 97. At the end of the day, the difference of 1 or 2 or 3%, okay, causes that the proteins that are produced are completely different. Okay, so we have skin and the chimps have skin. But the kind of maybe collagen and the kind of things that we have, the kind of materials, the very proteins that we have in our various organs are different. It's not a coincidence that you see how much strong a chimp is, this little thing, versus you. If you fight with a chimp, I don't think you will be the winner. You see how they climb trees and how they are very gymnastic.
Yeah.
So those things are not exactly like us. They look like us. And then another trick that they do, which is very dishonest really when they throw these things at you, is that there is 5% difference in the length altogether. So now they arrange the chromosomes in front of each other. We have 46 chromosomes. They have 48 chromosomes, for God's sake. Okay? And I have an episode on my channel called Adam or Ape, Who is Our Father? Okay, it's a bit sarcastic. Where I explain this matter of chromosomal number mismatch. And I show that it is impossible for a 48 chromosome species to beget a 46 chromosome species. It's impossible. Okay?
Yeah, we have people that are born with missing chromosomes, and that's usually Down syndrome or something completely horrendous.
They become impotent. So when if you have a 46 chromosome human being that begets a 44 chromosome human being, this 44 chromosome guy will not be able to marry, because if he marries, it will not work. Like a donkey and a horse. You get a mule, but the mule will not be able to produce more mules. Mm-hmm. You see where I'm coming from. So there are so many differences between really what is the function and what constitutes a human being versus what constitutes a chimp, to the extent, regardless they look like each other, okay, they are completely different creatures, for God's sake. Yeah. Look at humans and what are chimps. This is one. In terms of the materials they are made from, the difference in proteins is unbelievably striking. And then you go and you tell me there is similarity in DNA that is 99 or 98% or 97% or 96% according to your methodology. And you completely forsake 5% that you did not even consider because the human genome is longer by 5%. 5% of 3 billion. Okay? So we're longer by 5%. And there is somewhere between, I don't know, 1 to 4% difference. So there is something in the order of magnitude of 10% difference. Okay? 1% or 0.1% difference in the genetic material can cause so much, because at the end of the day, plenty of it builds the body, and then the rest arranges it in a different way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الذي يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك. So there is a process of خلقك, there is a process of سواك, there is a process of عدلك. Probably the matter of خلقك, okay, you have a bill of material for a building that looks like a marvel of the world, okay, and a bill of material of a building that is dwelling for the poor. But what is the main building blocks? Bricks, steel, glass, wood, this and that. All right? What is the recipe of the building blocks? So if you put together, really, what you need to do to build a skyscraper versus what you need to do to build the city of the poor, you will essentially, probably at the end of the day, end up with 99% similarity. And the 1% is the genius of the engineer rearranging the materials. The instructions that you are going to give to the builders to use the same amount of steel, the same amount of bricks, the same amount of this and that, they will still build rooms. They will still dig foundations. They will still have pillars. They will still have walls. But they will arrange them in a way, in one place, it will be a skyscraper. It will be, I don't know, the Empire State, or I don't know, the Burj Khalifa, or Petronas Towers, or whatever. In the same, but with a different arrangement, will be a flat one-floor city of the poor. You see where I'm coming from? So don't go and tell me it's 1 or 2 or 3% difference, for God's sake. You have a huge difference in proteins. You have a huge difference in functionality and what a human being is and what a chimp is. And you don't understand the genetic system altogether. And apart from that, it is not the whole truth. There is the epigenetics, and there is what we do not know about the genetic system altogether. So I hope I have given enough answer to that.
So to recap, like that particular question, you're saying that, for one, the ratios that they use are entirely arbitrary. Depending on what strands of the DNA, what portion of the DNA, you'll get different answers. Whether it's 99, 93, 70%. Secondly, it's self-contradictory, because as you said, they will appeal to the vast agreement in genetic material, but then they'll also concede that only a small percent is needed for drastic changes. So
Absolutely.
You can't have it both ways, right?
Absolutely.
And then the third, it's very subjective, even the anatomical aspects, because we've been conditioned when we see in the textbooks this gradual change of ape or like ape-like ancestor to two branches. But you can literally do that with a horse and a cat. You can do that with a horse and a hippo, depending on how you align them and how you look at them. They'll see, because if you look at a gorilla and like in a zoo, and then you look at like Jessica Alba or like some beautiful human being, there's no similarity whatsoever. It's like, unless you go into the finer details. But if you look into your cat's eyes, you look at a horse's eye, their facial expressions, they're very similar. They're just longer faces, but they look like humans. You know, they have hooves and one.
It is like somebody telling you a Lamborghini or whatever kind of car is 99.9% similar to, I don't know, to a Corolla or something, to a Toyota Corolla. Okay?
Yeah, you can make that case on an atheistic paradigm.
Guess what? They use the same gears, the same materials, the same motor system, the same maybe traction, the same wheels, the same materials of the wheels, the glass, the steel, everything. But guess what is different? The design is different. The assembly instructions is different. Okay, so all the tons and books that explain how to create the materials and parts will be the 99%, but then the 1% will tell whatever the robotic system that is assembling them to make them differently. And I tell you something else. Look at yourself. Your brain and your liver have 100% similar DNA. How about that? Let me say it again. Your brain and your liver and your bone and your muscle and the retina of your eye and your hair follicles, right? If you have hair. And
let me explain this, by the way. I did have a bad hair day. That's why I'm wearing a hat. My wife, my wife told me, why do you look like Rotana from the bottom, like Iqra from the bottom or Rotana from the top? I'm like, I've never seen that used for a guy, you know.
So the thing
That's
is,
why
all the cells of the human body have 100% exactly the same DNA. But
That's
what
incredible.
makes a brain cell and a liver cell a liver cell? It is the instructions, the epigenetic instructions that causes the DNA in the brain to manifest the cells in the form of neurons and the muscles in the form of muscle fibers or what have you. All right? So even 100% similarity, okay, or a 99 or a 1% similarity essentially means nothing. It is all about the instructions that are given to the system. Set aside all the deceit and all the nonsense that is put layers above layers above layers, because when you start at a premises that you have at the end to fulfill, there are no boundaries to what you will say. You will always justify to yourself. The conclusion is always in your mind from the beginning. It's an unfair.
All roads lead to it. Yeah.
We have a brother that wants to join. Let's see. Hold on. He probably has a question.
All right.
Can I just share? Because I know you had a debate with a Christian on your show earlier. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One second, let me just make a brief analogy. So I'm one of my interests is New Testament textual criticism. That's where it's basically like the evolution of the New Testament, you know?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people there is a thing where they'll tell you all the manuscripts of the New Testament are 93% identical. 93% identical. Same thing. So that means that this one definitely evolved from an original, you know? But then when you look into the details, some of that percentage is the difference between son and God, huios and theos. So you only need to have one change for the entire canon to be completely different.
Change the very creed from Trinity to monotheism to something else, maybe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not about the number of changes. It's about the gravity of the changes.
Exactly. Quality, not quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ayakallah.
Assalamu guys.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I've been like studying, like learning this in a kind of a casual way by like watching debates. I don't know if you've heard of Sabor Ahmed and stuff.
Yeah.
Watching a lot of their material. And what I just want to like see if you guys agree with, like, basically what I've noticed is science of itself is more like it's a way we understand how things work, and with that comes with like assumptions such as like naturalism. It's like in the philosophy of science, naturalism, and then you have like the assumption that you guys talked about, which is like similar traits, therefore similar source. You know, these are all like assumptions. So when it comes to like someone asking a question between science and like in Islam, would it like be best to bring up the philosophy of science and how it works, assuming that like supernatural is not involved, so therefore we come up with conclusions that are conclusions that don't involve it, but we our best prediction of it. Basically, that's how you guys see how it works, if that makes sense.
I have another proposition for you.
Yeah.
Which will also work well with this one. Because this methodology, I think, now there are two types of people that you can be talking to, okay? Somebody who's looking for the truth. So if you give him the truth, he will find it, okay? And somebody who is just looking for what he wants to find, okay? And if he wants to find nothing, he will eventually end with nothing, because he's using denial, not rational thought, not his rational faculty. So I like saying this. Okay, if I show you that the Quran, that claims to be a message from the one God that created everything, has in it statements that can be unequivocally shown to point to facts in science, sociology, psychology, history, mathematics, cosmology, etc., different areas of human knowledge that could have not by any means been known to the Prophet Muhammad at his time, nor to his compatriots, not even to anybody on the face of the earth at his time, or even anybody on the face of the earth that he could have contacted. Okay? And I show you that these things in those different disciplines, number one, are consistent and coherent. Number two, are scientifically correct in terms of being compared to facts, to measurements, not to theories, to facts and measurements. Okay? And I tell me, give me not the best explanation, give me the only possible explanation. Okay? And that explanation, in my opinion, the only possible explanation can be one of two things. Number one, he was lucky. Okay? He was lucky, saying something that ended up being correct. I can accept that as a rational person if this is just one thing, if it's a 600-page book or 6,000 and something ayat book. Okay?
6,236.
Absolutely. And it has one by chance word that looks like وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ, and then we discover that as-sama is expanding. Okay? Fine. But there are tens of them, hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them, when you consider all areas of science, apart from the eloquence, apart from its spiritual effect, apart from this and that. Okay? Apart from its effect on the life of people, to make people happy, to make them content, to make them satisfied, to make them feeling safe and secure, to make them sleep at night and wake up happy in the morning, to make them face all kinds of difficulties, to make them willing to live for a cause. Okay, and give everything that's precious to them happily, and convey this to their children, etc. Okay, just let's look at the first thing. It can either be by chance, or it can be by the work of a fingerprint of the Creator. Now, Brother Wissam here has said something. وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. There is a second layer of meaning to that. So the Quran goes at least at 4 layers of meaning. So the first one is the direct thing, اختلاف between, difference between the ayat. This one says something, that one says something. But then there's a second layer, is اختلاف between the Quran and the reality. So if it says لَمُوسِعُونَ at one time, and you find that as-sama really is expanding, and then okay, then come on. This cannot be the second coincidence. And then it says in a third place, ثم استوى إلى السماء وهي دخان فقال لها والأرض ائتيا طوعا أو كرها فقالتا أتينا طاعين فسواهن 7 سماوات وجعل في كل سماء أمرها وزينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح. So it's after the dukhan, first thing that comes is stars. And then you look into scientific papers and you find them saying this. Stars, there was a smoky state, and then few millions of years later, there was the first stars. And it goes on and on and on and on. From the creation of the universe, to the stars, to the sun, to the moon, to the earth, to the rain, to the atmosphere. So, only this, okay, because, why I'm telling you this? Because if you are going to talk people into Islam and into believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using philosophy of science, the person who is in front of you needs to be a philosopher of science. He will not understand what on earth you're talking about. Okay? But if you bring me this book, I'll tell you, I can prove to you that this book is 1400 years old. All right? And then you open the first book and the first page, and it says, okay, cells have nuclei, and in the nuclei there is something called DNA that is formed of letters called nucleotides, and a nucleotide can be one of 4 letters. Let me give you this as an assumption. And this is a 2,000 years old book, and this was, I don't know, the book of the Hindus. Okay? And somebody who's a Hindu is coming to tell you, this book is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he shows you this. Believe me, I will believe that it's from Allah. Of course, this will have no contradiction with Islam, because he told us he has sent books to everybody. It will authenticate to me that's from Allah if I'm a rational person. Okay? Because he told us that he has sent books to everybody. Okay? So now if I'm telling you, this is the last book, it's 1400 years old, it has evidence that's from Allah, but there is a twist here. In the same book that you will accept it is from Allah, it is saying that this is the last one. Khalas. No more prophets. Right? Then khalas. The deal is sealed.
Yeah.
What else is there to discuss? Okay? There is only the illusion that science has the truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth, which science says that it doesn't. And if it says that it does, guess what? The scientific theories that were governing the humanity only 100 years ago are all down the drain today. Every one of them is down the drain today. Right? The cornerstone of physics, which is Newtonian physics, is down the drain. Determinism is down the drain. It's now quantum uncertainty and all the other stuff. No DNA, nobody knew anything in biology about DNA and genetics, etc. Now it's a completely different ball game. Right or not? So in physics, in chemistry, few decades before that, there is something called the phlogiston or the phlogiston theory about how chemical reactions happen. Down the drain. Okay? Almost every single theory that governed humanity a couple of centuries back has been changed. So obviously science does not have the truth. It's no secret. So, but measurements do not change. Measurements do not change. So if you have the right measurements and the right scientific facts 1400 years ago, this is a direct proof that only deniers will say it is not proof and will look the other way. And
that's a great point, because Sabur, Akhuna Sabur Ahmed, he used to have a certain opinion about intelligent design, because he preferred the philosophical arguments like you just brought up, saying that science is built on presuppositions and is subject to change, so we can never use that. But the truth, usually, in my humble opinion, is always in the middle. So the Quran does speak about scientific phenomena. You can't really disregard that.
Absolutely.
Unless you're going to make everything metaphorical, but then it's a slippery slope. So there are the things that the Quran speaks about of a scientific nature, as the Sheikh pointed out, are mathematical in nature. They are not subject to change. So instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying, we can never use science, then you're saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a type of text that speaks about science that we could never use. And I don't think that is a good way to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom. So and it speaks about archaeology, things that are like literally written in stone. Written in stone is like something that can't change. Archaeology is about etchings and remnants and whatever. So you have things, and not only that, but it's representative of the universe. Like you said, the universe is finely tuned, the cell is finely tuned, so that signature should be available inside the message as well. So It's finely tuned even within the Quran itself. And actually, I don't see any.
Actually, thank you very much for this comment, because I think there are some Muslim du'at.
They're afraid.
Some of them are pretty popular, and some of them, inshallah, يعني لا نزكيهم على الله لكن نحسبهم على خير. They are afraid, all right, to use scientific evidence for the Quran. Okay, they are afraid that the science changes. So this extreme measure, okay, of either not using science at all or extravagantly using it are both wrong. They are both catastrophic, actually. Okay? Because when the Quran, when Allah says, "جعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي," I don't know how you are going to say this is metaphorical. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why did he say it? وجعلنا من الماء كل شيء. It's very obvious. والسماء بنيناها بأيد وإنا لموسعون. It's very obvious. How are you going to change it? I don't know. Okay? وكل في فلك يسبحون. How are you going to change it? Okay? والشمس تجري لمستقر الله. How are you going to change? Why did he say it? Okay? Allah is Al-Hakim. If we do not appreciate the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are reflected in his book, okay, then we are committing a crime against our religion. Because he said, سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. He said that. There is no metaphor there. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. He's talking about the Quran. So he is saying that the signs that will be discovered at the horizons, okay, and within ourselves will be evidence for the truthfulness of the Quran. Now, I would say that the word horizons is not just looking into the telescope into deep space. I will say it is the horizon. It means the frontier of all our knowledge. Now, I'm being a little bit metaphorical. If you don't like what I am saying, at least consider the horizons. At least consider looking into deep space.
وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ فِي الْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينِ. So the ufuq is in a different place. Yeah.
So at least look and in deep space. So he says, at least he's saying here that evidence from cosmology and evidence from biology will be evidence for the truthfulness of the Quran. And then we have at least to consider all the cosmological references in the Quran. وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ الْجَوَارِ الْكُنَّسِ النَّجْمُ الثَّاقِبِ
وأنه هو رب الشعرى.
Absolutely. فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وأنه هو رب الشعرى. It said there is huge. يكور الليل على النهار ويكور النهار على الليل والسماء ذات الرجع والأرض ذات الصدع. The Quran is full of references to nature, to biology, to physics, to mathematics, to all of those disciplines of science. Is Allah having extra number of words that he wants to put in a book? No, he says that he doesn't do that. He says that he doesn't do that. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَارٍ. So everything is with proportion. Everything is its place. He is Al-Hakim. So this is really a good opportunity to cry out to all Muslim scholars and all. If you don't know science and you're afraid to use science, don't use it. Don't use it. If you don't know it, don't use it. But if you know it, and if you see that the Quran is making a clear, unequivocal reference to science, and you're not using it to lead people to God's science, God's signs, in the way that He asks you to lead them, then this is deficient representation of God's word.
The ayah that you brought up, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ. Like, that's a command. That's literally a command.
Absolutely.
How do you interpret that any other way than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you to look at creation and to find out how creation began? Absolutely. If you're not going to look at it scientifically, how are you going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating Adam with his hands or the jinn from a smokeless fire? He's telling you how He began the creation of ourselves, of the scientific aspects that we can readily observe. Not something that happened in the beginning of time.
Absolutely. So the people who should have done the protein residue comparison of humans versus chimps, and the people who should be doing the human genome comparison to chimps, and the people who should be studying all those features of the amazing level of advancement of the human brain versus all other living creatures, and the unbelievable level of sophistication of human language, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ar-Rahman, what? خلق الإنسان علمه البيان.
And then a scientific statement, الشمس والقمر بحسبان.
And then الشمس والقمر بحسبان. Look how it's Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. Okay, so the Quran was taught even before the human beings. Okay, خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. And then this is a clear reference that human language human language is something specific to humans.
mentions واختلاف ألسنتكم.
Absolutely. And in the story of the creation of Adam in Surah Al-Baqarah, he says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. So human language was populated with all the terms of all the things. All right? To the extent even that the angels looked at some of the things that he was showing them and they did not recognize them. My interpretation is that those are things that will be associated with the human being, maybe a computer, maybe a mobile phone, maybe a car, maybe something. They say we don't know those things, but he knew those things. So Allah gave the human being this unbelievable, amazing intellectual capability, not only of using language, but actually even of putting terms and tags and categories to things. Humans are known as categorizers, all right? So we need to be, us humans, واختلاف ألسنتكم علمه البيان وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها. We should be the ones who are doing research in linguistic evolution.
فورب السماء والأرض إنه لحق مثل ما أنكم تنطقون.
Absolutely, مثل ما أنكم تنطقون. Subhanallah. So I have, by the way, this series on my channel. It's called Quranic Marvels. And I have a colleague, Dr. Basil Tawfiq. And this, just because you mentioned this last episode, we were talking about ants, entomology, and specifically ants in the Quran. And we stopped at the ayah about منطقة
الطير.
not منطقة الطير. I want to say the part where, with the part where the ant is commenting on Sulaiman alayhi salam coming. Okay?
Oh, okay.
And the ant, calling her comrade ants to go in their dwellings. And then he was showing this scientific paper that shows that ants have a specific language that is codified, and it falls into 4 categories, and one category is for sounding an alarm and giving group instructions. All right? And this kind of research is done not by Muslims. We should be researching ants. All right? Just go to the channel and see it. It was this last Tuesday. It's completely amazing. And so why is Allah subhanahu? And then you go into a discussion with an atheist and says, does ants speak? Oh, yes, ants speak. Guess what?
I didn't know that. See, I knew that they had mechanisms of talking, but I didn't know one of them was reserved for, like you said, for danger or sounding alarm. That's incredible.
Not only the scientific theory for the communication of ants was that they communicate by chemical signals. So
by smells and chemicals,
smells and leaving chemical traces. But then this research group put those ants in a glass box and put very sensitive sensors, and then created events for the ants, and then isolated the sounds that are produced by the ants. And they would isolate a sound, and they will see how the ants will react after the sound. So when this sound is produced, for example, ants attack. When this sound is produced, for example, they escape. When this sound, and they mapped the ant language. And this is acoustic, it is not chemical. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he says, فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِقًا مِنْ what? مِنْ قَوْلِهَا. It is accurate. When he says, لَا يَحْطِمَنَّكُمْ سُلَيْمَانُ وَجُنُودُهُ, in the interview, he was showing that the exoskeleton of the ant is made of a crystallized material that gets actually crushed. It's calcium carbonate material that looks like glass. So it gets crushed. So why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying لَا يَحْطِمَنَّكُمْ, not just لِيَقْتُلَنَّكُمْ, for example, or any other term, any other expression? Those things are there to be found. Those things are there to be found. It is deficient on our part towards the Quran not to find these things, not to research why the Quran uses each and every specific term in each and every specific place. And then we will uncover the jewels of the Quran for those who are looking for the truth. This is the whole point.
Okay.
And can I just say one more thing? Because the sheikh here is from Egypt. I don't know. Are you aware of the CAT scanning that they've done for certain Pharaonic kings like Ramses and Merneptah.
Yeah, so you mean about the incision maybe, or a broken rib, or the way his hand is wrapped or broken?
No, they did like a diagnostic study on Ramses on like I believe 14 different mummies. And two of them, Merneptah and Ramses II, those are the ones that are basically ascribed. Yeah, they're exactly they're predecessors, and they're ascribed to the time of Musa alayhi salam. And they found that they had fused vertebrae, which is something called ankylosing spondylitis, or another disease called DISH, degenerative skeletal disease, or something like that. And in the Quran, in Surah Al-Dhariyat, Pharaoh, after he says, after Musa alayhi salam comes to him, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَتَوَلَّى بِرُكْنِهِ وَقَالَ سَاحِرٌ أَوْ مَجْنُونَ.
Okay.
All of the mufassirun, they interpreted that to mean ruknihi يعني جنوده, يعني جنوده. But the rukn literally is something that helps you stand, helps you walk. You know, if you look in Lisan al-Arab, it'll say rukn al-jabal jawanibiha. And you can take this to mean that he turned away using his staff, his walking staff, and that would be perfectly in line with hieroglyphics and what they've discovered about the mummy. So now when you think about Pharaoh saying Ana rabbukum al-a'la, and he can't even help himself walk, it tells you why Musa alayhi salam had a stick, because he grew up in the household of Pharaoh. Maybe he took it from him, you know. As قال وما تلك بيمينك يا موسى قال هي عصاي أتوكأ إليها وأهش بها على غنمي. Yeah. So the kalam that's used, and even the placement of ayat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is ayah number 49 of Surah An-Najm, which is talking about stars, a star. Ash-Shi'ra is a star. It's called Sirius star. But what they've discovered is it's a binary star. It's Sirius A and Sirius B, one that you can see with your eyes that people used to use for navigation. Sirius B is invisible to the naked eye. You need highly sophisticated telescopes to see it. Their rotation around each other is every 49 years. Wow. And it's mentioned in Surah, and in the only verse in the entire chapter that speaks about it is ayah 49.
Subhanallah.
So all of it is so detailed, subhanallah.
Yes, there are all of those things. So just for the brother,
Hassan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I brought it up. I would like to conclude, Mark, because I don't want to take up all the Q&A time for myself. Two more points that I wanted to mention is I see the Quran, subhanallah, I see it as a book of signs and not a book of science. And the reason why I say that is because you have many verses that show you the proof of God, not only using a scientific point of view. For instance, there's a verse that describes that basically many scholars came up with the conclusion that the world is round back then. One scholar came up from his interpretation of that verse that the world is flat. So there's different interpretations, but what we find in science can go with what we find in the Quran. And my point was basically, but whatever we do find in science is basically just what it could be based on our assumptions because of the philosophy of science, because of one of the points of science, like the philosophy is basically we have to believe in naturalism, or we adopt naturalism, which is to believe nothing supernatural is affecting us. So then their assumptions are based on those, but yeah, so that was my point. Basically, the philosophy of science has assumptions as naturalism, so they don't take into account other things, and then with that they come up with conclusions based on these assumptions that nothing outside is helping us, so therefore our best explanation is this, but they're not taking into account other things. So but yeah, I just wanted to see, see if you guys basically the difference between
we appreciate that. The difference in philosophy is something to take note of for sure.
Yeah, it's basically if you bring a question that's based on an assumption, the question itself can be true and can be stated as a fact because you have an assumption in it. And a lot of the questions that I think Muslims and even myself wondered when I was in school had this mask that it was fact, when in reality there were assumptions in it. So I just wanted to show that distinction. But then the other thing I want to say is you guys are mentioning, different miracles found in science. Just one thing that I found recently on a YouTube video is basically
Are you getting a pedicure or something?
Why you say that?
There's like a filing sound coming from below you.
I have no clue what that is.
Oh, okay.
I'm hitting my table and it's making that noise. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, probably the table.
But I just before I leave, I just wanted to share that there was from what we understand, Ibrahim alayhi salam is basically from the area of Iraq and all these places, and at least that's from what I understand. I didn't do too much research, but I know that's basically what's accepted. But one thing is in the Quran, it talks about how the Prophet alayhi salam looked at the sun and said, "This must be my Lord," and then you say, "No, it's not my Lord," because it went away. You know those verses?
In Surah Al-An'am.
Yeah, and they found in
Babylonia.
Yeah, you must have watched Muhammad Hijab video, I'm guessing.
No, it was from the One Message Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And I looked into it.
Okay, yeah, he probably reposted on his channel. But basically, they find on these coins a sun, a moon, and basically, from what they understood, is these people were worshiping these things. And the only evidence they have is what they just recently found. Yet the Quran spoke about this.
Absolutely. That's a great point. In those cuneiform tablets, from Mesopotamia. Yeah, it's called the Mesopotamian triad, where they worship the sun, the moon, and Venus.
Yeah, so and it's like a historical insight that we didn't see. So that's all I wanted to say. I hope I made some sense when I was explaining the first point about the philosophy of science and how it's not perfect.
No.
Plenty of it.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, brother.
Bye, guys.
Assalamu alaikum.
If Matt,
do we have another question?
I think one brother pointed out that he said something about throwing away the interpretations of scholars. If I could just if I could just respond to that, and then you can come in if you want.
Go ahead.
So in Islam, we have certain proof texts. We have the Quran, we have the Sunnah, we have ijma'. So the statement of a scholar, or even two or three scholars, when it's interpretive, when it's tafsir, like if you study just the differences between like Az-Zamakhshari and Ibn Kathir, or At-Tabari and Al-Qurtubi, they'll have vast differences in terms of how they interpret certain ayat. But we're not negating the works of scholars, alhamdulillah, at least I'm not. I appreciate everything that they've said, and that's our first primary, I'm what you consider Salafi. I'd never say that scholars are not important. So this is not what we're saying. So please don't take the combative, kind of conflictive approach where we're saying, yes, an ayah could mean this, but it has some kind of scientific implications that you could also look at. We're not saying this is exactly what it means. For example, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, in the ayah of Surah Al-Kahf, وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذُرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَصِيدِ إلى آخره. He said, علق على هذه الآية, and he said, ذَلِكَ لِأَنْ لَا تَأْكُلَ الْأَرْضَ أَجْسَادُهُم. He made a scientific reason for why they were being turned left and right, even though the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't attribute this to the Prophet ﷺ. He said this is most likely because the earth will eat them if they don't keep turning left and right. So this is something that even the Sahaba engaged in, that seeing why these phenomena happened. We have scholars like, for example, Imam al-Qahtani in his famous An-Nuniyya. He said, وَالْأَرْضُ سَطْحِيَّةٌ بِدَلِيلٍ وَاضِحٍ قُرْآنٍ. He said the earth is flat with a clear-cut verse from the Quran. So he interpreted it the same way we are. He just got to a different conclusion. So the ulama were not averse to this perception. This is based on ignorance. This is based on ignorance of the tafsir, this ignorance of what scholars have said in the past. Scholars were never averse to the idea of using Quranic statements and extrapolating them towards science. So as far as my specific example about Fir'aun, this is not something that this is not a hill that I would die on. I just said it was something interesting. That's all. Huh?
I would like to make 3 comments here, if you'd like.
Sure.
The first thing is related to the aspect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the philosophical sense that I have mentioned about the first cat. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. He wants to be found, and He is sending a message of guidance in which He will put fingerprints to the extent we can identify that the message is from Him. Of course, I'm using fingerprint as metaphorical here.
Before they make tabdi' of you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. What do you do when your little child asks you...
No one is saying that, ya akhi. Taqillah. Anyway,
what do you do when your little child asks you, how did I come to the world? Okay. You don't want to explain the facts of life to him. Okay. You will give him a statement that he can understand at his level of understanding when he's like 4 years old, that when he will look back when he is 40 year old, he will not say Dad was lying.
Yeah, exactly.
You got
something
what I
general.
mean?
Yeah. Mommy and Daddy loved each other, or something like that.
Mommy and Daddy loved each other. You will use puns. You will use words that have different meanings. Now, assume now that there is this second situation, okay, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending to us a book where He wants to put scientific science, but He knows that the science that we will have as humans will dramatically change over ages to the extent that some of the scientific facts will be thought to be the contrary of their reality. For example, the matter of the earth being flat or spherical. So He is sending a message to earth. By the way, by the time of Prophet Muhammad, before Prophet Muhammad, there were theories that the earth was spherical. But then when the church took over, the church took a their scientific position as a church was not justified by the Bible. It was justified by opinions of some of the apostles or some of the saints. Okay? And then the church took a specific position that the earth is flat, and if you say that the earth is not flat, you're a heretic. All right? So the Roman Empire was ruling the world at that time, so obviously the position of the church, which was adopted by the Roman Empire, was, the predominant science. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this. He sends down the book where when He refers to the shape of the earth, He uses words that can be almost equally interpreted as flat or as round. So He says, وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَحَاهَا. So you look at this word in the Arabic mu'jam, and you find that dahaha might mean made it flat, and in the same time that the word dihya is bayda, egg. Okay? And then you look at this miraculous selection of the word that has exactly both meanings. Why didn't He say only basata? He uses basataha at any point in many other places where He is referring to the apparent shape of the earth. Okay? But at a point of time, He uses the haha. At another point, He uses يُكَوِّرُ اللَّيْلَ عَلَى النَّهَارِ وَيُكَوِّرُ النَّهَارَ عَلى اللَّيْلِ. So He uses both. So that if you are, because the Quran is a book of guidance, the signs in the Quran are there to take you towards God, not to put you in conflict with yourself or to put you in doubt. So if you are a simple person and everybody around you is saying earth is flat, the Quran does not want to fend you off religion because it is a book of guidance. It will just as if staying silent on this. But when you grow, it's like when you tell your child, Mom and Dad loved each other, you will understand that love on its own does not bring children.
Mm-hmm.
Or you will understand that love can be a reason for bringing children, or that making love has two different meanings. One is emotional and one is physical. All right? So it's giving you use of lexicon, use of semantics, use of language that will either take you to him by showing you a scientific fact in a miraculous way, or using words that will be neutral in times where the earth is living in darkness of science. To the extent that at those times you can find other evidence in the Quran related to sociology, related to language, related to history, related to other things. So the Quran is a multifaceted book. Today we are in the age of science. You cannot expect from At-Tabari, for example, to understand what وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ is. So the man, what did the man say? He said, لَمُوسِعُونَ, he means وَاسِعَةً.
Yeah, and it's not a
yeah,
it's not an insult towards At-Tabari.
It's not anything against him. It's not anything
all
against
limited
him.
in all this. Yeah.
He just says وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا, or other mufassirun said وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا وَأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. The meaning, the literal meaning is, and the sky we built with aidi, with hands, and we are indeed its expanders. It doesn't mean that it is wasi'ah, that it is wide or it is expansive, but they just said he means it's expansive because they look at the sky, they don't see it expanding. They just stop at what they know. They want to give people something.
Exactly.
You don't blame them for that, but you also don't blame science, and you don't blame people who are showing to other people who are in the age of science how the Quran, through science, can take them to faith. It's very simple.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Please go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. It's kind of like the concept of nasakh, whereas the ayat that are mansukhat still have a kind of an importance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. So that's not removed. That's for their understanding for that time as well. And then وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةَ حَتَّى تَعْلَمُوا مَا تَقُولُونَ. And then it eventually got to فَاجْتَنِبُوهَا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. So it's not that all of those different ayats have their own application. You shouldn't approach salah when you're in prayer. When you're drunk, you should. They do have a little bit of benefit, but the majority of it is harm. So it's all those ayats are taken to be kind of like progressively revealed to these people to help them and to guide them through life in that similar process. And
absolutely go ahead.
I was just going to say, if there's any more questions, let me see. I'm trying to go through this.
Yeah, we kind of got sidetracked from evolution because of the philosophy question.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see if there are other questions about evolution.
Yeah, I don't see any questions here. Yeah, I don't see any questions. You can go ahead, Luis.
Okay, I will just say another little comment here about the mufassirun and the people who really did great effort when they looked at the Quran not only as a source of religious guidance, but even as a source of knowledge of the world. So I was having an interview with a Muslim physicist called Dr. Basil Al-Ta'i. And he was telling me the fundamental of physics were inferred by early Muslim scholars to the extent that some of the very difficult aspects of physics were inferred directly from the Quran. So, for example, one of the philosophical aspects in the philosophy of physics is whether there are actual infinities or not. Okay? And the existence of actual infinities is very important because if you say that the universe is eternal, it means that there are an infinite number of past events. So he says that Imam al-Ghazali, for example, says that whatever begins to exist has a cause, and the universe begins to exist. But he didn't know that the universe began to exist by looking through Hubble telescope. He said that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and other scholars, not only him, they look at words like وَأَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا أو لَقَدْ أَحْصَاهُمْ وَعَدَّهُمْ عَدًّا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has counted everything. So everything is finite. And time is a thing. Okay? So time has to be finite. Okay, and things have to be finite. So the universe is not infinite in terms of what it contains and its size. It's not infinite, it's limited in size. Okay, and time is limited in size. And when they looked at خلق السماوات والأرض, then خلق السماوات والأرض alone means that the samawat and ard has a beginning.
بديع السماوات.
Yes, and many ayat, he says خلق السماوات والأرض بالحق تعالى عما يشركون إلى آخره. So there are many ayat in which he says خلق السماوات والأرض and بديع السماوات والأرض, and so many ayat in which it is clear.
كيف بدأ الخلق.
Yes, كيف بدأ الخلق. There is a beginning. So they use these things to establish fundamentals of science, fundamentals of astronomy, fundamentals of physics. Okay, now they don't do everything.
Al-Khwarizmi, he used the inheritance ratios for his mathematical foundations.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah. that's great. And at the end of the day, we need to appreciate that even the early mufassirun, when one of them looked at a specific ayah and another one looked at the same ayah, they might have different opinions. Because when the ayah is talking about something that is outside of religion, where they cannot get back to a Sahaba or to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or explain it from another ayah in the Quran, and they are writing a complete tafsir for the Quran, they will just put an opinion. This might be because of this or that, like the ayah of Surah Al-Kahf, as you were saying, so that they are not eaten by the earth. But now we know that, going on different sides is very important, so you don't get,
circulation,
bruises, and you have problems with your circulation, and then you will have, la qaddar Allah, qurah and ulcers and this kind of thing on your skin.
And so, saying that is not disrespectful to Ibn Abbas. It's just not.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Wants to join. Let's see.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, as women working, what do you think of that? What is your
women what?
Like, is it a good thing? Working. Like some people be like, so when they get married, oh, I don't want my wife to work, and some of them don't mind. So, how does?
I'll tell you this: if I was a woman, I would not want to work at all. If I had a husband who can take care of me and provide for me, and I can just live lavishly and chill out, that's what I would do. But as far as fiqh, I'm not a mufti. I'm not qualified to give that. But I know basically that there are parameters like ikhtilat, selling, buying haram, exposing yourself to fitna, dress code, things like that have to be taken into account before she can work, because the Sharia doesn't prohibit her from working. She also has to take into account her husband's feelings, if he has ghira, if he's going to be harmed by, there's a lot of considerations. But I can't give a fatwa. I don't know if the sheikh is more comfortable saying something about that.
Yeah. So women working.
Do they work though?
So let
would
me
you
tell
want
you,
your wife to work, and what do you see it as? Like for you and other people, like what do you, just
personally? No, like I said, I wouldn't want her to. No, obviously.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I asked. Some people, they see it as, oh, why I can't work? What's the difference? There's the new people now that khalas, we're the same and blah blah blah. How they.
I don't know if it's new people. Like I said, you have to separate between preference, what you like, and what is halal and haram. Where I'm not doing that. I'm not comfortable doing that. If there's maybe for some couples it'll be better. Like if let's say she teaches kindergarten or Quran classes or something like that, that's beautiful. If you guys can combine your incomes and work towards something good, give more sadaqah. Sometimes it's very good for a wife to work. Many times it's good, but it's just the type of work and your particular relationship.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Sheikh, what do you think?
I think I would refer to the Quran for that, for what is sure in our religion. Of course, this is obviously away from the evolution, but it is something about,
It's evolution of society, maybe.
yeah, it is about whether we can actually, for important questions in our life, whether we can find, if not clear or direct answer, whether we can find at least clues in the Quran or not. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. So we have brought down to you the Quran in clarification of everything. Okay? So about women, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He's talking about the creation of Adam and Eve, He says, he says what? Yes. لِيَسْكُنَ إِلَيْهَا, when He's talking about Hawa. So Hawa to Adam is somebody to which Adam should receive peace second from her. So it essentially points to the fact that Adam is in the area of noise and plenty of trouble and plenty of mashaqqa, plenty of work, and he needs somebody to go back home to, so he will yaskuna ilayha. Okay, so this is the first clue. And the second clue, after Adam and Hawa alayhim salam have committed the eating from the tree, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before that, warns them. He says, فَلَا يُخْرِجَنَّكُمَا مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ فَتَشْقَيَا, right?
Mhm.
No, it is fatashqa, not fatashqaya. فَلَا يُخْرِجَنَّكُمَا, you both. So he's warning him about Iblis. He should not tempt you to eat from the tree, etc., or he should not tempt you in general to expel you both, يُخْرِجَنَّكُمَا, expel you both, get you both out of it, the Jannah, so that you will tashqa, you will suffer. Okay? Obviously, when he was describing the Jannah, he was saying, إِنَّكَ فِيهَا أَلَّا تَجُوعَ وَلَا تَعْرَى وَإِنَّكَ لَا تَظْمَأُ فِيهَا وَلَا تَضْحَى. So there is no shaqa in Al-Jannah. Okay? But he was warning them that the shaitan can push them out of it, and the consequence of that would be that you, Adam, you are the one who is going to suffer. All right? And then he says, الرجال قوامون على النساء. The men maintain women. Of course, it has another aspect to it, which is men are in sort of management of women, not only just maintenance. It's a double meaning word. But for man to maintain woman, it means that man has the financial means to do that. Women are not obliged to do that, obviously. And then we have the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam with Al-Abd al-Salih, where the daughter of Al-Abd al-Salih comes to him, when he sees them, and he asks them, قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. So she says, لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. She's apologizing. Okay, she says, we will not, the matter of اختلاط you were saying, we will not, our sheep will not drink the water unless the others would go away, unless the other shepherds go away. And so, of course, he is thinking now, why do I have to do it? Where is your guardian or father or brother or something? And then she says, وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ, and our father is an old man. And then, when she goes to him, back to her father with Musa alayhi salam, she says, قَالَتْ يَا أَبَتِ اسْتَأْجِرْ. The first thing she wants to do is to get rid of work. Okay? She's not just glad that she's taking I'm going to work every day. I take my sheep just like those other men. Okay. So this is the القوي الأمين. So this is the general mainstream in Islam, that work for men is an obligation. Work for women is not an obligation. There is no ayah in the Quran that says women should not work. But there is the general spirit and theme of Islam that women are second. Now we need to ask ourselves a question: which kind of work will maintain a woman as a second.
Yes.
Which type of work will cause that she does not تسقي until الرعاء will يصدر الرعاء. Okay, the اختلاط, as you say. She will not be in a kind of work where she is humiliated or she is put in a disprivileged position, so she needs Musa to push through the way. She is, at the end of the day, not brought here to earth to suffer in the field of work, but rather to bring up the new generation of Muslims who will carry the message of Islam and who will carry. Now, if she can fulfill this obligation while maintaining all the other constraints, there is no issue in working, because sometimes even if you look in the history of Islam, before Islam was a religion, that Khadija alayha salam, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, salam, she was running her trade, and she wanted to find somebody to run her trade for her. So women in Islam inherit. Okay, we have inheritance, and when women inherit money, they will need to run their business. So obviously this is considered work. So just the premise of Islam giving a woman the right to inheritance means that she will have possessions, and those possessions will need to be maintained. Now, whether she will work by herself to maintain her possessions sheep or to run her garden, or she will need to sell things, like for example in the Seerah of Umar ibn al-Khattab, he was passing and he heard a woman telling her daughter to mix the milk with water. The story is very well-known story. So obviously the woman is working. Obviously, she is selling milk. She milks the cows or the sheep or whatever, or the goats, and she sells the milk. So obviously she is working, but obviously she cannot help it, because obviously there is no man in the house. So the general theme of Islam is that Muslim women are privileged. This is the way I will put it. Okay? In the naturalistic atheist society, under the premise of Darwinism, here is where Darwinism comes. Okay, so Darwinism sets no rules for humanity. Okay, man and woman are just two members of the species, and it is survival of the fittest. This is, let's go back to Darwinism now. This is the difference when your fundamental ideology is Islam and when your fundamental ideology is Darwinism. Darwinism is survival of the fittest. If the woman cannot work, the woman might as well die. Okay? If the woman is needed by a man because she will fulfill his, I don't know, want for the different gender, okay, to reproduce or to have fun, then maybe the man can also procure this service. Okay? Because there is no marriage in Darwinism, right or not? Okay? And since the man can procure this service, if this is beneficial to his survival, okay, then the woman might as well work as a prostitute. There is no problem in this sense. Okay? So there is no issue there to humiliate the woman, to make the woman a commodity, to use her in advertising, etc., 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 as basic premises that stem from the Darwinian thinking. That she is just a creature and she will have to run for her food, and if she is not fit for survival, she will be stepped upon by other animals. So humans are animals in their thing, and in their thing, the female lioness will go hunt, and maybe the male lion is, you know, having his lazy day, right or not? But if the prey is so big, it needs the muscles of the lion, then the male lion will move now. Okay, this is the same. This is the real fundamental theological foundation of forcing women to work in the naturalistic world. Essentially, what's happening today in the modern society is not giving the woman the opportunity to work. Sorry, no, this is not what is happening. It is forcing women to work, otherwise you will die from hunger, because nobody is obliged to marry you. Yeah. You have no value. Nobody. You will be called unemployed. Okay? There is nothing in Islam called unemployed women. Because being a woman is a job in Islam. But being a man is not a job in Islam. Okay? Being a man, you need to have a job. Being a woman is enough reason to live and be maintained in Islam. Being a man is not enough reason to live and be maintained in Islam. If you are a man who is capable to work and you sit home and your father is spending over your expenses, you are deficient. It's shame on you in Islam. But in the Darwinian and the social Darwinism methodology, we are animals. Female animals work, male animals work. The female animal that doesn't hunt its prey, she dies, right or not? The male animal that doesn't hunt its work, it dies, yes or not? So why not females and males act the same? Okay, the male lion will go and will take over the females of the other lion and will kill its children. It's a vicious world, man. We are evolved from chimps. Okay, this is the from chimp ancestors. Okay, this is the difference between our theology and our ideology and their theology and their ideology. They force their women to work, otherwise they suffer and die of hunger. They throw their elderly in nursing homes because they are no more capable of working. Okay, we don't. Being a senior man or woman, father or mother in Islam means you have earned your right to be taken care of from your children and from the whole society. In their methodology, you have not. You will die of hunger. Okay? They want to get rid of you. They call you useless eater. They call them useless eaters. Okay? And if you don't believe it, go back to the philosophy of somebody called Thomas Malthus, who was one of the elders of Darwin. One of the great ideologists in the age of Darwin, who was endorsing Darwinism, and one of his his ideas were fundamental to the capitalist and to the liberal ideology, that the poor do not deserve to live. This is where they are coming from. The weak do not deserve to live. This was later developed further by Aryans, for example, and was a fundamental thing in the thinking in Europe, and it caused plenty of trouble. Because we are a good race. Some race would say we are the best race, and other races do not deserve to exist, and we need to maintain the purity of our race, because the human in his own, at his own right, is not sacred. Is not about, but in our theology, in our ideology, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. So there is a very great thing. The problem is, I'll tell you where the problem is. The problem is when we consider this hybrid creature of a Muslim who is living with the modern society ideology. You need to make a distinction between using the products of modern society and using the science of the modern society, absorbing the facts of science of the modern society, and not absorbing the fundamental ideologies of the modern society. So we will treat our women differently. Our women, in respect to the great status that Islam has given them, okay, need to understand that there is nothing super duper fancy about working, by the way. As you just said in the beginning. Come on, guys, men and women today, hey, it's the weekend, hey, it's the weekend. Why are you happy it's the weekend? Because you're not gonna work. So why the hell do you want to work in the first place?
we saw during the COVID quarantine, those who had the opportunity to just sit at home and get unemployment, men and women, they both did it.
Absolutely.
It's not like the men were saying, yeah, I'm still going to work.
Absolutely. So you know what's the problem? The problem is that Darwinism, social Darwinism, has sold to the modern Western society the idea that not being able to yourself produce your own means of living means that you are not fit to survival. And hence you are deficient, you are subhuman, and you don't deserve to live. This is where they're coming from, and this is where we should not be coming from. Work is an obligation, work is a burden. Men are taking that burden because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them and gave them their obligation. It is an obligation that they fulfill against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Women have other obligations if they fulfill it, and if within the constraints that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts, not that men put. Neither men or women put any constraints in Islam. And then work is, they might be obliged to work because they need to spend and nobody is taking care of them, like the woman who was, you know, mixing the milk. Okay, of course, she was doing something wrong, but she was selling milk, which is okay. Or they need to take care of their possessions. But at the end of the day, we need to make a great distinction between the benefits that we can make from the modern society and to take very great care that Darwinism is not only a scientific theory, but it's also a societal theory and an ideology, a complete ideology. It's a religion or life. And our religion is different. So I hope that this is somewhat of a concise answer to the brother.
Yeah. If I can just add, like, if your wife is willing to go to live by your criteria, like not working, you know, taking care of the kids and stuff like that, then I think it's incumbent upon men to give them something that they can do, you know, like to get some kind of fulfillment out of their lives other than their obligations, whether it's like Islamic classes or whether it's activities that you guys do or things that she can do. You know, you have to give them also alternatives. You have to provide that for them, because a person who just sits at home and they need this stuff too, learning about Islam, learning about the evidences of Islam and the Quran. They need that faith booster too. Sometimes we don't even ask. We don't even ask how they're doing or how would they be getting this information, you know, not from the Arabic channels at home or anything like that. You have to give them alternatives. If they made that sacrifice for you, they really want to go work, but because of your prerogative, and you ask them to do something like that, and they agreed with you out of love and commitment to you, then you know, provide them something that they can do.
Also, some jobs in Islam are needed to be taken over by women. Like we need female dentists, we need female doctors, we need female educators, we need female many things. So as to preserve also the to protect other women and many other things of that respect. So for sure.
Yeah. Sure.
So what else do we have?
Okay, thank you شيخ. شكرا جزيلا لكم جميعا.
الله.
يلا الله معك.
شكرا. السلام عليكم. All right. So
it must be pretty late where you are.
Yeah, it is. Are we about to call it a day, or at my end, it's called a night, actually?
I think one person just wanted. Oh no! It's Assam already came up, right?
Okay, we have another brother. This will be the last one.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Inshallah, this will be the last one.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I have three questions. First one is, what's the ruling on working on a grocery store that sells cigarettes? The second one is, what do you think is the best country to raise your children in? Because, you know, like in Western countries, I don't think it's the best option because, you know, you don't want your children getting affected by the Western culture, and that may be a problem, like homosexuality and etc. The third question is, I think I forgot.
It's okay, inshallah, it'll come to you.
Yeah, could you answer the questions I've asked? Maybe I'd remember until then.
Yeah, like I said, we're not like fuqaha, you know. This is not the topic of the stream.
Oh yes, I remember the third question. Yeah. What do you think is the best response to the people who say mind your own business when you come to advise them? Because I've literally seen some people who say you're a terrorist just because you advise them.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody goes to that level of extreme, then that's somebody you want to avoid in general.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, that sentiment is there. I don't know if people have been called terrorists. I mean, that's his experience, but that sentiment is there. Like they call you an extremist, a mutashaddid, because you mentioned these things. Yeah. Cigarettes. I'll give you just I've asked Sheikh Abu Salah about this when I used to work at a gas station.
You worked in gas stations, yeah.
Yeah. So Abu Salah, he has like a PhD in Aqidah and fiqh. So I asked him, and I did a lot of research on this too. So apparently, to me, it's not permissible. Yani there are circumstances, maybe if it's like an extreme durura or something like that. But I worked at a gas station where this guy, yani I don't know what happened to him now, but he used to come and buy like 2 packs of Cools every day, and after a certain amount of time, his wife came and she was getting his cigarettes for him. And I asked her, like, oh, how's he doing? Why didn't he come today? She said, well, he got a diagnosis of stage 4 lung cancer.
And he still wants them.
And still couldn't give up smoking. My heart like collapsed to Allah, because like I don't want to be a participant in any of that. I know he'd probably get it somewhere else, but the fact that it comes from my hand, I feel like I helped him destroy his own body. You know, that's just the logical aspect of it. As far as haram and halal, there is like pretty much consensus that cigarettes are impermissible, and Allah idha harrama shay'an harrama thamana.
Yeah,
that's what I would say on that.
I see.
Yeah. With regard, what was the third question?
The second
advice.
question. The second question was, where do you think is the best country to raise your children at?
The most traveled brother on the panel here will probably be able to tell you.
Because you know, even Arab countries, because you know, even Arab countries aren't as good as they were before. You know, because like the parties and
the parties.
Yeah, and
I
all
don't
that
know.
stuff.
Because like best, you mean like for Islamic education, or because like some countries are really good, but the economy is so bad. You know, some things you might not want to subject your children to.
Yes, indeed.
Well, I don't know. I was born in Yemen, and I've been here my whole life.
Because we've only experienced life in this country. So, I mean...
You were born here, Yassam?
Huh?
You were born here?
Yeah, I was born and raised here, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
So, I mean, like you said, like you mentioned, Ustad Ahmed, you've traveled to many countries, so you would have a better understanding of this than we would.
What are the best place to raise your children at? If you are already living in an Islamic country, why would you want to leave it unless there is very special conditions? So
No, I mean, what do you think is the best? That's it. Like the most suitable place for an Islamic environment.
I don't think there is a global best. I don't think that this is a possible solution. But sometimes a country will be the best country for you, but not the best country for me. So even from Islamic aspect. So, for example, look at a country like Egypt or a country like the UK or a country like the United States. So in the United States, you will find people living in New York and people living in Mississippi and people living in Nevada. So are they the same environments? They are obviously not the same environments. So in a country like Egypt, you will find people living in the city and people living in the countryside. Are they the same environments? They are not the same environments. So if somebody is in a specific country, I don't think the unit here is a country. I think the unit is your exact circumstances. If you are living in a country and you are extremely poor and you don't have any means of sustaining yourself in that country, but in another country you can live a better life and you can still have a good environment for your kids. It's a very personal choice. I don't think this is a general question. This is number one. Number two, the world is changing very fast now. So countries that used to be very good at some aspects are not the same, and countries that were not very good are becoming better. So there is a huge flux in the world. So giving that flux, I think it's a very personal decision. My personal opinion on that, if I have a choice, I will avoid countries that are really pushing harder towards the matter of dissolving families and dissolving the role of men and women, and preaching the matter of more than two sexes, etc. Okay, why? Because in the Quran it says,
Osama's gonna.
I think the matter of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom wa Amora, the villages of Lut, and that at the end of the time, وإن من قرية إلا نحن مهلكوها قبل يوم القيامة أو معذبوها عذابا شديدا كان ذلك في الكتاب مسطورا. I think that the places that will be subject to the greatest amount of Allah's anger would be the places where a man can marry a man and get a marriage certificate. And the places where your son will go to school and he will be taught that he might be a boy or a girl according to his choice is not a place I would like to put my children in, because every other school will be saying the same thing. Okay, so if there is a criteria that I would, if I have today the choice to go to any country, I will arrange countries in a descending order, where a man is still a man and a woman is still a woman and a family is respected, and there is the only legal way to have a family is to get married. These will be the countries at the top. And then from those countries at the top, if I have a choice, I will choose the country that is more suitable to my condition. If I'm an engineer, I will look for a country that needs engineers. I will look for a country that's speaking my language. I will look for a country that has the kinds of freedoms that I am looking for or that are important to me. But this will be my first criteria, because in this age, this is really going to be horrible in 5 to 10 years. And yes, I don't want my children to be in that kind of place.
Yeah.
This is where, if I have a choice, if I don't have a choice, or if I am born somewhere, my only choice will be to try to protect my kids and give them a very good education about what is acceptable and what is not. But if I have a choice, I will think of it this way. If you asked me this question 20 years ago when this was not really on the stage, I would have given a different answer. I hope this was helpful.
I see, thank you.
And with social media, I mean, the world is becoming a melting pot in terms of like, especially in terms of like the impact that Western culture has on the world. So even if you went to a country that probably is not pushing this as hard, our kids are still going to be exposed to this, especially if they're going on social media and things like that. So as time progresses, it's going to be a lot more difficult for us to kind of like keep them away from this stuff. So I think the best thing that we could do is to equip ourselves with knowledge of how to have them steer through these things and how to be able to intellectually combat these things. Because to just keep them away and to keep them, you know, hidden away from this stuff, it's not a viable option. It's not a realistic option. Our kids are going to be exposed to this stuff no matter what.
Yeah, there is also the aspect of when they are going to be exposed to this.
That too, yes.
And because exposure at a very young age is different than exposure at 15 years old than exposure at 25 years old.
Exactly.
And there is also the aspect of, for example, even in the United States, you will find schools that are Christian schools, okay, where those things are not allowed.
Yeah.
All right. Even in the matter of Darwinism, etc., you know, the Dover trial, etc. So there was a movement by the ID community to try to make it legal to teach intelligent design in schools. Of course, they lost the case. But I mean, even if you are in a place, let's say you are in a place and you are, okay, it's a matter of fact, okay, or you're American or you're British or you're whatever in a country that has changed its laws or changed its social standards, there can still be choices within, because that's why I'm saying a country is not a unit, you know, a country is so many things. There can be choices that, for example, you will not select the best super duper kind of school that is, you know, very good so that you can go later to Harvard or Stanford. But you will, you know, go to a school that is a good mix between a good quality of education, but also principles that are similar to the kind of principles you're looking for. So my kids, and I was in Egypt, my son came to me at a point of time telling me they are teaching me evolution. And actually this was one of the things that, you know, okay, I have to do something about it. Okay, and it was a motivator to go public with it, because I'm looking around, and on YouTube, whom do you see? You see Dawkins, you see Krauss, you see Sean Carell, you see this and that. And where are the Muslim scientists that are talking? You don't find them, not so much of them, or people avoiding talking about it, etc. But even if you are in the West, you can find, for example, a school or even a university. If you cannot find one that is based on the principles of Islam, maybe you can find one that is Christian. Okay, at least they
A
will
conservative
respect
Christian,
yeah, at least they will respect not teaching your children to be Christians. Okay,
Yeah.
because they respect their freedom, but they will not teach him that the boy can also be called she.
Yeah.
I met a delegation of Christians, like they were in seminary school and ministry work and stuff like that. They came to Michigan a couple months ago on a trip for proselytizing and evangelism, like trying to make Muslims Christians. But they ended up staying here. They ended up wanting to live here because they said this is more in line with their ideals than where they came from in like North Carolina and Tennessee and stuff like that. So we should, if you're equipped and you're confident in yourself that you won't fall to these shubuhats, maybe you can move to a more conservative part of the United States if you can't go overseas, but also give da'wah at the same time. Maybe give them da'wah because we have similar ideals. They may gravitate towards that more than, you know. If there's, you should also want to help the people that are kind of intertwined in this mess, not just always wanting to get away.
Yes.
Of course, the Prophet ﷺ said, يُوشِكُ أَنْ يَكُونَ خَيْرُ مَالِ الْمُسْلِمِ غَنَمًا يَتْبَعُ بِهَا شَفْعِ الْجِبَالِ أو مواقع القطر يَفِرُّ بِدِينِهِ مِنَ الْفِتَنِ. So for some people, they're going to fear so much about the fitna that maybe a remote place on a mountain would be better for them, you know. And there are some people who the Prophet ﷺ said, الْمُسْلِمُ الَّذِي يُخَالِطُ النَّاسِ وَيَصْبِرُ عَلَى أَذَاهُمْ خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِ الَّذِي لَا يُخَالِطُ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَصْبِرُ عَلَى أَذَاهُمْ. So everybody has their own, I guess, arsenal of qualifications and readiness for these specific things. If you're single, the place that you might want to move is different than a married person, you know. It's just, there's so many variables.
This is a very good point also.
Yeah.
So it is definitely personal, and there is a very huge spectrum where you are born, where can you go, etc. But those two criteria, I think, are for the future, for our kids, for many other things. And one lesson learned here is that I think we as Muslims across the world need to recognize that it is very close in time that there has to be good bridges and good connections with people who believe in God and in the moral system that is coming from the revelation of God, regardless which religion.
Yep.
At a point of time, even let's even not talk about Christians and Jews. A Hindu who believes that there is a moral standard that is built on family and marriage, etc., 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 being your neighbor, okay, is much better than somebody who believes in nature as the God and Darwin as the prophet.
I agree 100%.
So this is the reality of the case. His God is nature and his prophet is Charles Darwin. So this is really not the kind of village or small city that you want to be surrounded with those kinds of people. They will not respect the family. They will not respect your wife as being your wife. They will not respect that you have a boy child and a girl daughter, etc. And these things are, I think, in 5 to 10 years, and we should plan from now, that Muslims and other people who believe in God we should have some sort of believing in God societies. If you are not living in a Muslim country, then a believing in God city or village or environment, maybe in Michigan, maybe Mississippi, I don't know, might be much better than a very naturalistic place. Let's see how things develop.
Allah يعافينا.
بارك الله فيك يا محمد.
جزاك الله خير. I can see the. Oh, somebody's there.
Yeah, Muhammad.
Oh,
He's still here.
he was there the whole time. Okay, okay. I didn't even know because the square is blacked out. I was gonna say his name is Ahmed. Yeah, okay, come on.
No, of course.
That was the Prophet's nickname, so I.
Ahmed Muhammad, same. Subhanallah.
Yeah.
But if there was any, were those the questions you had? Inshallah, and they were answered.
There was one that we shouldn't touch. But
Thank you for your time.
Allah يبارك فيك.
بارك الله فيك.
جزاكم الله خير. Thank you.
وياكم. Yeah. So you think we should end it here?
Yeah, I think it's nice.
It's very late where you're at. We don't want to overburden you. Allah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. In the future, inshallah.
The same thing I told you. He said, I've never seen someone from Egypt speak English so eloquently. And I told you that. I told you that the other day.
Strong people in Egypt.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
That's messed up.
Is that we use it for,
he just said, you know what he said? Yeah, he just said you're pretty eloquent for an Egyptian.
I heard that. Thank you very much.
You know what I mean?
How dare you?
So, yeah.
You smell pretty nice for a Yemeni.
So, thank you, brothers. It was not a short night, but it was a very nice one to know you. And
Sorry, and thank you. Barakallah feek. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Inshallah, we can do maybe a. Yeah, absolutely. For me too, man. You said so many things that I'm just gonna carry with me, inshallah, for life.
I think you put a lot of things into perspective that I didn't have before. Allah halak. Yeah, really beneficial.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the audience, and I invite you to join the channel to know more about evolution and other stuff. And let's say سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات يتواصوا بالحق ويتواصوا بالصبر. So thank you very much, Sam and Wissam.
Barakallah feek. Thank you so much. Well, inshallah, we can do another one of these at your earliest convenience, inshallah.
Inshallah, I will be happy to. Inshallah.
تصبح على خير.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Do I have to press something from mine? Oh.
No, they were just asking what the channel was. It's Finding Truth on YouTube.
Finding Truth, just like that. He also has a Facebook page. He has one of these like almost daily where you can join on the panel and ask him questions, and he actually interviews some of the world's leading authorities on these subjects. So he had William Lane Craig, who is like the biggest philosopher in Christendom right now. He had James Tour, one of the world's leading chemists.
James Tour. I watched that yesterday. That was amazing.
Wasn't it mind-blowing how he says that they lied to you inside the research papers? When we tell this to like agnostic people and atheists, they'll say, you guys don't know you guys can't read the research papers. That's why you're saying all this stuff. Then you have the actual authorities, people who are literally reference points for these researchers, and they're telling you the same exact thing. He had people who believe in evolution and are theists, like Jonathan Swami Das. So it's very you get everything on that channel, mashallah.
Yeah, I enjoyed the interview. I watched it yesterday. It was nice.
And I hope nobody got the wrong impression from me, like I'm some kind of like a mubtada'. I was throwing away the works of scholars. I never said anything.
I think you know,
far be it for me. I mean, who am I to?
We want to specifically stick with what the scholars say, of course, and we don't divert from what the scholars say. Hafidhahumullah.
Yeah.
I think that it just becomes more interesting when you hear certain takes from people that don't necessarily follow the faith, and then you see that it's in line with what's stated in the Quran. So of course, it's an interesting thing to look into, but it's not necessarily like we're saying, okay, this is what they said is the thing that we should go with. Let's just totally avoid what the scholars say. No, of course not.
And like I said, the scholars they سلكوا هذه المسلكة. يعني they did talk about science in the Quran. When I mentioned Imam al-Qurtubi, no, Imam al-Qahtani, I didn't say that to say he was stupid like Yasir Qadhi is talking about people who prohibited qahwa and whatever. No, I said that was merely to say that he used ayat in the Quran to establish a scientific phenomenon in his time. So he arrived at the wrong scientific phenomenon. Huh?
He's falling off the rails, man. That guy's going off the rails.
Yeah.
And
this is what Brother Farid calls the Mujaddid complex.
I mean, when you become so full of yourself, that's the problem. I think you can get you can get in philosophy to some extent, but when it becomes so much so that you become so subjective in the way that you think, that's where the problem is. And I think that's the route that he's on right now. That's the problem.
Yeah. And it's الإعجاب بالنفس يعني من الثلاث المهلكات. He literally said, this. Oh, but if you want to know the answer, come to my classes. $150 a pop. Come to my classes. I'll tell you the answer. What?
This is deep.
Yeah, he wants a specific group of people that he can cultivate, and maybe because he's pretty accomplished. Yani Medina, masters, PhD.
Yeah.
But then he wants more. ولا يملئ جوف ابن آدم إلا التراب.
الله يهديه ويهدينا.
I mean, وكل أمثاله. There's a lot of people like that. A lot of people like that. But I respect the scholars. I love them. They're my entire foundation. So don't. I was giving a lecture.
Never come across anything from you that would make me believe.
Yeah, no. Because I think one or two brothers might have.
I'm very specific in who I choose. You know what I'm saying? To involve myself with wallahi, and I'm being serious.
Exactly.
And if we fall short, and we do deviate in some sense to the, we are. You message me all the time. And
technical points.
Yeah. Hey, this should have been said, and I appreciate that. That's fine. It was fine. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. But
you're probably getting it from your wife like me too, man.
My son just came in with a non-stick spatula and said she made some cake. So he's like, cake. Okay, thank you so much, Isham. Oh, barakallah fiqh. Yeah, I'm gonna go eat, and inshallah we can get together again sometime and discuss evolution more in depth.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Okay. Let me put an end to this.